what's happening? What's going on, everybody? It's me, Jeff Gerstmann. I'm here to talk to you about video games. This is the Jeff Gerstmann Show, where we do that sometimes. I don't know, a wide range of topics will be discussed, and it's quite a day today. We're in the middle. We're in between two directs. Welcome to the new episode of Between Two Directs. I'm Jeff Gerstmann, and we're between two directs. One old, one new. We stand at a crossroads. We look into the future of the future of video games at our doorstep. That's right. I'm talking about Haze and a brand new port of Haze. No, we're just about ready for tomorrow morning. We are less than 24 hours away from Nintendo revealing significantly more information about the next platform in their stable, the Nintendo Switch 2. And there'll be things to discuss on that front. There was also they kind of finished off with a final Nintendo Direct devoted to the Switch 1. Which was kind of like nice. It was like the best one of those they've ever done. I don't know. I can't remember a single thing about any previous Nintendo Direct other than a general feeling of like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, I guess. So this one, I don't know. This one had some real proper smash hit announcements that were super exciting. So yeah, I don't know. I'm right now. I'm actually really excited about that stuff. So the Switch 2's got kind of like suddenly like the bar got raised a little bit, and you're like, okay, like yeah, okay. There's a new system coming out, but for the one I have already, they're making a Rhythm Heaven next year. So like, what are you gonna do about it? You know what? Let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll get into talking about stuff after this. A better, cleaner, and more professional shave for less money. Sounds like a no-brainer, right? But people keep going to the store and buying garbage. These plastic, flimsy handles with these built-in razors. They're disposable. It's just junk. It's just junk. There's a better way. It's Harry's. Harry's knows you don't want to shave with low-quality products. They found a way to get an incredible shave for a price way lower than all these big brands, and that's a win every single time. They've got a nice weighted handle. It feels solid in the hand, and just, I don't know, it's easier to move than some of the flimsy little disposable things out there. It's just, those things are just a mess. They use German-engineered blades made in their own factory that stay sharper longer. And they've got customizable delivery options with scheduled refills for as low as $2. That's half of what you pay for some of these other big brands. You can get a 5-blade razor, weighted handle, foaming shave gel, and a travel cover for just $3. What? $3. That might as well be $0. They might be giving these things away. $3. Go to harrys.com/Jeff. You can also get, they've got a wide variety of products. You're looking for a body wash, deodorant, hair and grooming products. They've got an extra strength, high quality deodorant that is just $5. Just $5. And this body wash comes in scents like redwood, wildlands, and stone wildlands. They've got the highest customer satisfaction in the shaving industry. And a no-risk trial, so if you don't like your shave, no worries. It's on them. They also have a convenient subscription option that you can cancel at any time. So you keep the blades coming. These nice German-engineered blades that are just getting you the nicest, closest, cleanest shave you can get. It's fantastic. Normally, this trial set is $13. But it's time for you to get the edge on your shave with Harry's. Normally that trial set is $13, but right now you can get it for just $3 at harrys.com/Jeff. That's the exclusive link, harrys.com/Jeff, for a $3 trial set. Wow. All right, so yeah, they did do a Nintendo Direct last week. We were out. We went to Disneyland. For, it was like spring break. Like they stagger spring break, for different grades of kids and different school, little kids spring break is not the same as college kids spring break. Because you can't have 5-year-olds at Lake Havasu doing body shots with a bunch of college kids there. They need their own space for their body shots. It just doesn't work out. Disneyland is, man, I have a frustration, and whatever. I have a frustration with Disneyland that I don't think is necessarily unique. I think it's a relatively common set of complaints, really. But it was a wonderful time. It was our first time taking the kids away overnight as a squad. Like when we just had the one kid, we tried to take her places and it didn't go so well. She didn't travel super well as a baby, but this was our first night in a hotel room with everybody, and no one slept. I don't know. We stayed up late anyway, thinking like, well, we're here. We're going to watch this water show. We're going to see the fireworks that they do at Disneyland. And then everyone will be so tired that we'll just throw them into these beds. And no, these kids caught like their 9th wind, despite like not eating any food pretty much all day, managed to find like a new resource of energy. And so, like I was in one room with the 2 kids and my wife was in another room with the baby. The baby didn't sleep super well, and then the kids were just like jumping out of bed constantly. They were in and out of the bathroom 5 times. It was just like, all right. So we got a few hours sleep, and the whole point we stay, because we can drive to Disneyland. It's not pleasant, but you can do it. But the whole reason you go and you stay is that you can get in early. Like it's a half hour, but it's like a little bit early. So if if there's rides that get really long lines, you can get in early and go right on that ride and maybe catch 2 if you're lucky. But the problem is no one goes to sleep at all. And so you're waking up and you're like, okay, we've got to get everyone up and dressed and fed so that we can get into Disneyland at 7:30 instead of 8. And it was fun. It was an interesting experiment. I'm glad we did it. And whatever, like no one slept, but like honestly, no one is sleeping here anyway. So it's kind of whatever. And I don't know. It's I think I have a lot of like complicated feelings about Disneyland in a weird way because like I went a couple of times as a kid, and I have like very distinct but like very esoteric memories of just like, oh, these waffles, and oh, this started the month that I really liked orange marmalade and then decided I never wanted it ever again, and there was an arcade inside of the Disneyland hotel, and what happened to that? So like, you find yourself like looking up online, like what the fuck happened to this place? It ain't like this anymore. What happened? And find out like, oh, in the early 90s, they totally redid the pool area and eliminated the arcade at that point. And you're like, okay, yeah, all right. That makes sense. It's worth it. Like it's worth it because you've got kids. Like I would never want to go to Disneyland otherwise. Like without like the idea of just like, I'm going to go to Disneyland. Like, fuck that, dude. And so but like the kids had an amazing time. Like every single thing they did and saw, and it was all awesome to them. And so like watching them experience it was fucking rad. you know, and they're like, and like I'm looking at it going like, you know what, these rides are cool. Like I'm looking at it going like, this is neat. Like, you know, in some ways you're kind of watching the same formula expanded out through the decades. So like we went on a handful of rides because, you know, it's like it takes a minimum of a half hour to, you know, wait in line for a ride. And the majority of the rides for the little kids are not eligible for the like, hey, you spent extra money so you get to cut the line pass, which is a whole different nasty thing that I think is super gross. But basically, like, I don't know, like you walk around and you just hear people complaining. You see people having good times, and every conversation you hear within earshot is someone bitching about something, and you're like, yeah, like if this was theme park, you would fucking hover your mouse over each individual person, and they would all be frowning. And then they would tell you after the fact how great a time they had. That is Disneyland. And yeah, but like, you know, going around and watching this stuff. So like, you know, there's a bunch of old ass rides that are still there. You know, there's a lot of stuff that seems like relatively untouched. Like there's a little Snow White ride, and you get in a little cart, and it goes around, and the cart kind of jerks around the turns, and you see a bunch of, you know, figures kind of doing their thing, and, you know, they're animating, you know, like it's a mixture of like real world animatronic style things, and like them projecting stuff from the cartoon onto the wall. And it's like effective, and you look at it and it's like it's like getting excited about practical effects in a movie. Like that's kind of the excitement about it, is you look at it and go like, look at this fucking weird contraption that they made in the 50s or something that like I can still ride on, and look at this fucking thing. Crazy. And I think that that's cool. And there are newer rides, like I don't know when this shit was built, but like we went to Toontown, which is a section of Disneyland that I had never been to before. And they have something called, I believe it's the Runaway Railway. And it's like the exact same concept, but with much more modern technology. So you get into this, you know, these train cars, and then the train crashes. No, Goofy can't fucking steer the train because he's a dumbass. And all, you know, you're standing in a room watching a cartoon, and then a hole blows in the wall, and you walk through the hole. Like it to get into the cars in the first place. Like it's neat. It's a bunch of neat shit. They do some stuff where they separate the mine carts, and you go into a little bubble with a big screen kind of up, like going up and around you. And the screen shows, you know, cartoons of you falling off a cliff and falling, and they shake the stuff realistically, and you look at it and go like, yeah, I mean, I don't really feel like I'm falling, but I kind of feel like I'm falling. Like, this is kind of fucking cool. And it's just a series of really neat effects around that. And I think that that's fucking cool. And the weird thing is, you know, again, the Runaway Railway and the Snow White ride are decades apart in construction, but like the concept is the same. You know, of like, oh, there's kind of a, you know, it's just weird movement, and you kind of see some stuff, and it's you know, they're trying to fool you in a couple of ways, and it sort of still works. And it's really neat, man. I don't know. Like it's neat just seeing all of that technology, you know. It's just seeing all of that Imagineering on display. But for me, like there is this kind of like nostalgic thing of like, you know, so when I went to Disneyland as a kid, my dad dragged me onto Space Mountain, and that really set the tone for the rest of the trip, I think, because it was terrifying. It was a fucking nightmare. I was like, you know, 5, or, you know, I was young. And not ready for that, but like, and I reacted poorly to it. And then after the fact would not go on anything else. Like we waited in line for was it Thunder Mountain, which is a big fast moving train thing. And we stood there for a long time watching it. And so I got to stand there and watch it over and over again, and to get more and more scared of it. So when it came time to actually get on the ride, I fucking locked up, and I was like, I will not do this. And no one was happy. No one was happy about me doing that, but fucking what the fuck? So, my first thought was, well, my daughter's 5, my oldest daughter's 5. I should put her on Space Mountain. I need to do it. This is how it happened to me. We ended up not doing that. We went on a bunch of rides, kind of like relatively easy stuff, and then she's a big fan of The Princess and the Frog, Princess Tiana. She's a huge fan of Princess Tiana. Princess Tiana has been put on. They redid the log ride, whatever it was before. It was like mining stuff, I want to say. Like before it was branded with kind of more Disney stuff. It was just like a generic kind of mine theme, I think. And so they've retrofitted it to put a bunch of Princess Tiana type stuff in it. It was Song of the South before. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. All right. So anyway, now it has like all of this Princess and the Frog, or all this Princess Tiana stuff in it. And she saw that and was like, I want to do this. And it's like, it was like cold, like it had been raining earlier in the day. It was not a good day for a water ride, but she was like super excited. And I was just like, I need to fucking do something. I need to do something exciting. I need to do something crazy. I need to I need to experience this. I want her to go on something weird and maybe a little intense, because I want to see how she handles it. Like I just want to see how it goes. And so we're like, her grandfather is with us and is like, he gets on as well. And so the three of us are just like running through the line, because it's not a long line for it, because the weather's not great. So there's not, it's not like a huge wait or a huge line to get onto it. And so we're running through the lines here, and she's just getting more and more excited as she goes. And everyone around us is wearing like plastic ponchos, like they're going to a Gallagher show. So, I'm like looking at it going like, oh, fuck it, dude. Like if we just get soaking wet, who cares? We're going home today anyway, whatever. And she was so excited about it. And so as we're getting closer, she's like getting more and more excited. I'm like, are you sure you want to do this? Like it moves pretty fast, and there'll be some dark parts. And she was like, yeah, I'm like, fucking word, let's go. And so we get on, and like she's between me and her grandfather, my wife's father. And we're at the very back of the thing. The guy sitting in front of me is like, there's like a college kids. They're all wearing the same fucking t-shirts, because I don't know, people go to Disneyland and they do shit like that. And he's live streaming from his phone the entire time. So there's a TikTok live stream somewhere out there with like me in the background, if you're interested. I don't know. And we go on this thing, and like I'm expecting it to just be like basically, hey, we're gonna get wet, go on, there'll be some drops, we'll get wet, it'll be whatever. But like I just forgot how long the rest of the ride was, because I hadn't been on it in 45 years or whatever it is. And so there's a lot to it, and like all of it is like super high quality, so my daughter, the fan of the the framing of it, is like going, yeah, and she's like waving at all the characters and as they're singing and talking to her and all this stuff. She's fucking loving it. And then we get to the part where it's going to start dropping, and I kind of, you sit in a single file kind of log, and so I'm kind of holding on to her leg and saying like, hey, get ready, this is gonna start happening here any minute now. And she had the best time. She was so fucking stoked. Like even the big drop at the end, like they take the picture of you going down at the very end. And like I put my hood up, and I'm kind of like off to the side going like, ugh. I kind of moved off to the side because I thought, well, she's too short and the picture's not going to see her unless I move. So I'm like hood up off to the side going, ugh. And she's just got this like crazed, happy look on her face. She had a fucking fantastic time, and she got soaking wet and whatever. And it was all good. So like ultimately, I probably should have taken her on Space Mountain is what I learned there. But by that time, the line for Space Mountain was like an hour and a half, and we were like, okay, we are not going to do that. So yeah, I don't know. Like, other than my son, who is 3, being a little freaked out by some, things in the water show, which is all the other Disney thing that they always do. Is there always has to be some darkness along the way. They're introducing the thing, and they have their big booming fucking Disney guy voice, like, it's time for Mickey Mouse's imagination come to life, and but also dreams can become nightmares, and you're like, oh right, yeah, they always put a little bit of scary shit in these things, like, and the water show is based on Fantasia. And so it's just, like it's a bunch of cool shit and fun lights and boats and stuff, and then some fireworks, some up close fireworks, which were cool. But then it's like they spray mist out of the water, and then they project video onto the mist, and then like all of the video is just like fucking the walking brooms from Fantasia and like weird hellish heads and swirls and stuff. And my son's just looking at it going like, God, and he turns away, and I'm like, I'm glad we stayed up super late so he could turn away and not see it. But I don't know. That seems like the thing that they always, every Disney thing needs to have a little bit of spooky shit somewhere in there. So he kind of got the brunt of the like freaked out by a thing, but he, whatever. It was fine by the end of it. So whatever. So it was like a good time. Like I said, it's really fun to watch that stuff through, like to watch them watch this stuff, to watch them see it, and have a great time doing all of it, and eating weird food. Like it's all like fucking $1 zillion, and a lot of it is like low fucking quality at best. Like the food is dog shit. We went to Goofy's Kitchen, which is a restaurant inside one of the hotels, with a buffet. And, dude, hey, I like a buffet because I'm a trash man and I eat trash. I love garbage. I love to eat garbage. And so a buffet is awesome because buffets are all garbage. But usually I like it when the garbage is at a certain edible temperature. And hey, you end up in a situation sometimes where like you are, this is the common buffet problem, right? Is you show up just 5 minutes off cycle and everything's cold, and you're just like on the bad end of it, and they're bringing out new food while you're eating, but then by the time you get there it's cold again. And anyway, I ate as much of that as I could handle, which is way too much. And the kids barely ate anything, and it was hundreds of dollars. But like they populate the room with a bunch of people dressed up as character, like they got, here's Minnie Mouse dressed up as a waitress, and here's Chip and Dale dressed up like they're cooking stuff, and Goofy's walking around shaking hands, and you're like, all right, okay. And the kids ended up loving it, even though they didn't eat a damn thing. And it was, it's almost like I don't think it worked. I don't think it timed this way, but there was a moment where the bill showed up and I looked at it and went like, fuck me, what, really? And then like, as I'm looking at the bill, like every character in costume just suddenly is like swarming around. And so the kids are losing it, going crazy, and they're like taking pictures and all this stuff, and they're having a great time. And I'm looking at this bill going like, I'm looking at it going, okay. It's a fucking devious thing that they're running. It's a devious thing that they're running over there, but they had a fantastic fucking time. So, whatever. That was the point, right? They're supposed to have a fantastic time. It doesn't matter that, hey, guess what? The fucking sirloin you got from the buffet was room temperature at best. Like, whatever. I'm not going there to eat like high quality, I'm not going there to have some like fancy fucking meal. It's Disneyland, The best thing I had to eat was they sold there in the back of the place that at Toontown, they're selling hot dogs that they're putting chili, cheese, macaroni and cheese and crushed up potato chips on. And I had one of those, and it was not great. Like another piece of food that from a temperature perspective was not what I wanted it to be, but it worked out okay. I don't know. It was fine. Yeah, I don't know. Like, you know, the upshot of is like, there's like just enough shit that we didn't do that like now it's like we kind of have to go back. Especially now that like realizing that my daughter has a taste for like the faster rides. Now I'm just like, okay, yeah, I'm going to drag her onto all this stuff. And because I don't necessarily love that stuff. Like I'm kind of taking that back, or as an adult, a little bit more, and being like, yeah, I'm kind of maybe, yeah, let's go watch something. Let's go ride on some of this shit. Six Flags is calling. No, the one time I went to Six Flags down here, before I lived down here, I went on a roller coaster, and it jerked me around so much in my seat that like my upper back and neck hurt for like 2 months. Because it was so herky-jerky and I was too tall for the seats. So like there's no padding, there's no nothing. It's just like and it fucking sucked, dude. It absolutely fucking sucked. So I don't see myself going to fucking Six Flags anytime soon. Or if so, like, I don't think I'm going to go on any of that shit. I want to take her to the Nintendo thing at some point, or take them all to the Nintendo thing at some point and see that for myself. Cause I have not been there. So I'm kind of curious to see what that looks like. And yeah, I don't know. It was fun. It was exactly what it needed to be. But the thing you realize is like waiting in line and watching, just like the way that Disneyland operates is so like, I don't know. It just is not conducive to you like having a consistently good time. It's conducive to you like it inspires people to become fucking Disney weirdos, because you have to. So like that dinner is a great example. We showed up for that dinner on time for our reservation, and the guy was like, "Oh yeah, you should have checked in like a half hour before. It's going to be a bit of a wait." I'm like, whatever, like it wouldn't be a big deal. Like sometimes you show up for a reservation and you have to wait because it's a restaurant. Restaurants just, like shit just works that way. But for him to say you should have showed up a half hour before your reservation time was just like, fucking what, dude? Are you fucking hot? What the fuck is going on? Like that shit sucked. But like the way they build Disneyland, especially two things. The way Disneyland is, like the way you need to attack Disneyland, the way you need to over plan. And if you have not planned ahead by like months in advance, there's just shit you're not going to be able to do. And the idea that you're just like, okay, we need to like minute by minute figure out we're going to do this, then we're going to go do this. Like we spend a lot of time standing around going like, do we want to do this or do we want to do this? And it worked out fine. Like we had a good time, but like you get it really inspires. So like the other thing was the food reservations, like, you can get dinner reservations at places that give you really good seating for fireworks or really good seating for this water show or whatever. But if you don't get that, then you just have to go stand. You have to show up like an hour and a half early and stand somewhere and wait, because otherwise those spots will fill up and you won't be able to see a thing. So when you're with 3 kids and the oldest one is 5 and it's 10:30, it's like 8:30 at night, the last thing they want to do is fucking stand around for an hour and a half. And so, but if you wanted reservations to actually get decent seats so that you could just cruise in a little bit closer, you needed to make those reservations 2.5 months ago. Like, fuck, dude. Like, and so it inspires you to become this fucking numbskull Disney adult fucking loser where you're like, okay, we're going to go here and then we're going to walk this way. We're going to cut through here and then go over and do this. And then we're going to go on this ride and then we're going to lightning lane here. And then we're going to book this and do that. It sucks. Like they've not made a place that you can just go and just like breeze around and go like, what do you want to do? You want to do this? Like you have to fucking optimize. And the thousands of dollars the whole thing is costing you. You're like, well, fuck, man, we spent half the time standing around in lines, if not more so. Like this, like that aspect of it super fucking sucks. And so the thing they've done obviously is they've created additional tiers of service that you can pay for that will help you mitigate some of the aspects of that of like, oh, well, hey, I can sign up for this ride and sign up and book an appointment to go on this ride at this time, and we'll just walk right in and go. And here's our lightning lane passes and like all of that shit. It sucks. Like you look at it, you understand why it gets that way because Disney didn't get all the money it has by not charging you $1 zillion for every single thing they do. But it's like super gross. It's like it's gross to watch it all kind of unfold. And I don't know, like that part really does rub me the wrong way. It still does. It always will. I don't know what the answer is, like because the other answer is let fewer people in the park, which they're not going to do that. But like, I don't want to have to like solve math problems to figure out how to go to Disneyland. I don't want to go like, okay, well, it's going to take us 45 minutes to go in this. And then Pirates of the Caribbean is 15 minutes here. And then this, and then we walk over here. Well, it's going to take this much time to walk over here. And then you get there and you're like, oh, well, actually, it's Small World is closed the entire time we're there. So I guess, okay, now what? Okay, well, I don't know. Should we go over here and do it? It's frustrating. It's like it's very frustrating, and I'm sure that they have like analyzed and like mathed this out to work at every bit in their favor as they can while still trying to be as friendly as possible. The push and pull of capitalism, ultimately, I suppose, on the idea of a fucking theme park. But that stuff's really frustrating. That stuff's really frustrating. And yeah, that's Disneyland. I don't know. We had a great time. We had a great fucking time. But like the whole time, it's like gnawing away at me of just like the way this thing is built, the way this thing is, the way this thing has evolved, I guess I should say. And the multiple opportunities they will take to charge you for some more stuff. And I get it. Like I have kids that want to see that stuff, so it makes sense. And whatever, the kids had a great time, but ultimately that's why we did it, and why we factored in all of that stuff and realized like, oh well, we don't really need to get the lightning lane stuff because the kids rides are not eligible for it anyway. So it's really only the big stuff that has it. But yeah, I don't know. It's annoying. It annoys me in the exact same way that like limited edition shoes do, of just this thing that you look at and go like, it doesn't really need to be this way. You made it this way because this is a great way for you to make money. Like, of course, right? The incentives are what they are. But yeah, I don't know. We had a great time. I'm sure that we will go again because it's inescapable. But yeah, I don't know. Like I have to imagine again. I think the only ride we went on that even had a lightning lane thing was the Tiana, the log ride. And no one was in the lightning lane. But I imagine like standing in a super long line and seeing people just running up the other side because they made an appointment and paid more money and all this other stuff. I imagine that's the sort of thing that you look at and go like, we should strangle those people. We should probably force those people up against the wall, right? This is where the revolution starts, right? This is where we're doing this, right? Anyway, we had a great time. um, you know what? Let's take one more break here, and then I'll come back. We'll talk about Atom Fall, and more. Be right back. Data plans. No one likes thinking about them. No one. Data plans. People like thinking about even less. You're probably paying a fortune for that monthly data plan. That's okay. A lot of us are. But it's time to make a switch, because I'm here to tell you about Mint Mobile. Mint Mobile has premium wireless plans that start at just $15 a month. That is significantly lower than the average cost from one of these other, these so-called big companies where, half the time you're paying for them to rent a space in a crummy strip mall somewhere. Like, no. Mint Mobile puts your money towards the data and makes it happen. And it works. This is, they have a wide variety of options. They sent me a SIM card in the mail. I crammed it into my phone, and that was that. Done. They if you are looking for eSIMs, of course, they do that as well. So they have a variety of options. So, if you're just looking for like, hey, I just want a SIM card I can throw in here and do this and do that, they got you. And that's a great backup option if you're just like, hey, I need a second little something here on the side for some data and just a little phone thing I can slot in here when I need it. That works too. But you can put it in there and just use it all the time. And it just works. You can bring your phone number, all the stuff. High-speed data, the nation's largest 5G network. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you from these high prices. Ditch all that overpriced wireless and get 3 months of premium wireless service from Mint Mobile for $15 a month. No matter how you say it, don't overpay for it. Shop data plans at mintmobile.com/JeffG. That's mintmobile.com/JeffG. Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month 5 gigabyte plan required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. All right, Atom Fall is Rebellion's new game, but it is not. Well, I don't know. It's not entirely unlike some of the things that they've done before, but like, people have been likening it to Fallout, and it's not quite that, but it's got a certain similarity in that it is something you are dealing with an area that is, had a some kind of accident happened, and they've quarantined off an area. It is an intensely British sounding video game, but Atom Fall is an open world first person game, quest logs and so on. Quest logs and rusty guns. That's Atom Fall. So it has like kind of survival game aspects to it as well, but you're really trying to get to the bottom. Like the start of it is a little it's a little like, even for me, a fan of when video games are just video games, it's a little much, because it's just like you just wake up and you're in the quarantine zone and you're like, I don't know how I got here, but shit's bad. And that's something that I'm sure that you figure out along the way. But like, as the opening to a game, it's a little too, it's just a little too slapdash for me. Like, you get a little bit of setup about like, oh, there was an accident and they thought it was going to be quick to, fix, but hey, it's now they've really sealed it off, and don't go in the quarantine zone. It's bad. We're sending the military into the quarantine zone. They're not coming out. I don't know. It's the whole thing. And then suddenly you are waking up inside a bunker, and there's a man in a hazmat suit that is bleeding, and he's like, "Fuck, this sucks." And then you have to go bandage him up, or I guess you could probably just kill him if you really wanted to. And you go out into the world from there. You're digging around in mines. There are bandit camps. There's crashed military convoys. That I feel last night I found a town that is like just there's people living there, and they're the military is slowly taking over. And then I'd kind of forgotten that there was like a technological aspect to Atomfall from some of the preview material. I played this game a few months ago, and kind of forgot that, but like I was walking through the town, just kind of minding my owns. And around the corner, and there's just a big giant robot walking around. I was like, oh, shit. Right. Technology. But like fake new/old technology. Yeah, I don't know. You find a lot of rusty guns, not a lot of ammo, and you beat a lot of dudes up with cricket bats. And it's a good time. It looks really nice. It runs well. Like it's not... It doesn't feel broken the way a lot of kind of larger open world games get. Like in some ways, I think it probably pairs well with something like Avowed insofar as it is a game in that general vein, but smaller in scope, like a little more contained in scope in ways that I think don't necessarily sacrifice or compromise the experience, but it really helps focus it. Because it's giving you things like, hey, there's, you're finding a note on someone that says, hey, I left the supply cache at these coordinates. And then you're going on the map and you're doing your little Legend of Zelda stamps on the map and going, okay, I'm pretty sure there's something here. And I have a key to open something over here to when I get there and find it. And then I wandered all the way over there only to find that there's a zillion bandits wandering around. Combat in the game is challenging. You do not have very many bullets. I had a very lucky break at the outlaw camp where I was spotted by the outlaws as I was climbing up to the top of a tower. And so the only way up to the top of that tower is to climb the ladder. And so these idiots, one after another, just kept climbing the tower. And I had an axe. And so they're climbing up the ladder. And as they're getting most of the way up the ladder, I am hitting them as hard as I can with my axe. And they are falling off the ladder and dying. Or sometimes they are falling forward and staying up there. And then I can loot their bodies while I'm still in the middle of combat. And so I stacked up about 7 or 8 bodies there and cleared out almost the entire bandit camp before setting foot in it. All because they were very excited to see what was happening over there, and they all paid the ultimate price. An axe to the skull. So, the AI, not savvy in some ways, I might say. But it was super fun. So I did do that. But like in open like combat, you are gonna lose because you're gonna have 4 guys and 2 of them will have guns. And they will shoot you to death, or you can run up on them and try and stop them from shooting you. But then the man with the cricket bat standing next to him is going to hit you. And generally speaking, you're going to want to try to use stealth and intelligently pick them off. If you get behind a guy, you can just kill him, snap their neck, whatever, and deal with it that way. They will see bodies and investigate, so you can kind of use that to your advantage if you're looking to build a nice stack of bodies yourself. And all the while you're trying to get to the bottom of what the hell this place is. So like that's been the really nice thing about Atomfall is at every turn you're seeing something that you're like, I'm not really sure what I'm looking at here, or rather, I did not expect to find this here. Like for the type of game that this has been up to this point, I did not expect to find a town full of people. I did not expect to find, like this type of bandit camp or that, like there's neat stuff that you're seeing along the way. And that really goes a long way. It's got, some fun writing in some of the conversations you're having. Like pretty early on, well, I don't know. I guess the way I went pretty early on, you maybe don't go in this cave and maybe you go somewhere else. But as someone who went into the cave, you encounter a miner and you can have a long conversation with him about the voices in his head and stuff. And like a lot of that stuff is pretty well written. And that's been fun to engage with as well. It has a lot of options to tune the difficulty. And the default is basically set everything to, I believe, what they call challenging. And so it is meant to be a slow pace. Like, you are not meant to run around and stab everyone. Like, you are meant to be very careful in this game. There is a skill tree that I have not made much progress on, but like, you can't, this is not a game where you're tagging enemies and maybe there's a skill that lets you tag enemies or something. But like, it was very much like, okay, I just need to remember that I saw 2 guys over there. There's one over here. Like, there's no mini map. There's no, there's not a lot of that stuff on the screen giving you any meaningful level of assistance. And so it really, you have to kind of survive by your wits, and you have to be very fucking careful. By default. Now, if you want to run around and just stab everybody or beat them with fucking billy clubs and axes and whatever, you can tune things down in a general sense of just like, hey, let me lower the difficulty down. Or you can, it expands out into probably like 30 different things you can toggle to different difficulty settings. But like, if you want like better health regen, you can do that. You can set a custom difficulty, very easily as often as you want. And there's a really wide variety there that kind of lets you tune it. And so I think, if you're banging your head against it and really just not enjoying that brand of stealth, like, it's always going to kind of be that. Like, it's not a game that is, you meant to take on 5 guys at the same time and come out unscathed. Like, it's just not that game. And even at the lowest difficulty settings, it's not that game. But if you want to have a higher chance of surviving those types of stealth fuck ups, you can tune it that way if you want. And I think that's fine, if that's how you want to go with it. But yeah, it is, I have quite a bit more to play. But it's cool. It has a barter system that like has a scale. And so when you put things on, your side of the trade, it'll tell you if you're giving him too much or not enough or whatever to barter things that way. And so like, the miner had a flashlight that he was selling, but there's no currency, there's no money. It's all just trade. So I gave him like 1 shotgun shell, and that was more than enough. And at the time I was like, it's just 1 shotgun shell. And then I realized like, no, that's, you don't find a lot of those as you go. It's not like you're finding like, oh, it's a box of 20 shotgun shells. Hooray. Like, maybe there's later points in the game where you're getting more ammo, but holy shit. Every bullet matters in Atomfall, is what I would say. But yeah, I've been playing on a PC. I think it looks fantastic. It's just got a beautiful sharpness to it. And again, because the game doesn't give you a lot of helpful HUD stuff, that clarity really comes in handy because you're looking across, as a dry riverbed, or I don't know, like you're looking across some kind of ravine and seeing like, oh, there's 3 guys over there and they're patrolling around. Okay, I need to make sure that they don't see me from all the way over there. But also like I am eventually going to go over there, so I need to be mindful that there are dudes walking around. Even though this whole bandit camp, for example, just got axed to death, the minute I step out, there's like 20 guys. Like I can see a bunch of little patrols of guys from this position. And so you have to make a lot of mental notes about like, okay, I think there's 3 guys in this general direction. There's like 2 over here, but they're on the move too. So by the time you get there, they'll be somewhere else. And yeah, it's an interesting. They do it well. I think a lot of games will try to establish this level of difficulty or try to establish like, hey, this is the level of stealth we think you should play with, and they won't necessarily, they're not going to give you the HUD that you need to play it like it was a Far Cry game or whatever. But they don't really fill in the blanks on the other side of it as well. I think this game does a really good job of just feeling natural, of just like feeling sensible. Like it, you look across and you see those guys and you go like, okay, this is fucking, I see that one guy has a gun. and there's two guys with melee weapons. Let's be careful. And I think that stuff works really well here. Yeah, you should check it out. It is on Game Pass, and you should give it a look. You can buy it as well for dollars, like $50 or $60, depending on where you're looking for it, I guess. But yeah, it's a Game Pass game, so you should play it. Rebellion has made some neat games over the years. But this has kind of a pretty different feel than I think some of the stuff that they're known for. And it's an interesting fit into that kind of mix of like this type of like first person open RPG kind of thing. Like it's not quite, again, it's not like an avowed level of towns and quests and whatever. It is a little more survival game, but it's not stalker levels of fucked up. It's like it just feels like a very tight, well-made game, and that's real nice. It's real nice. You should give it a look. There are some janky fucking games out there, though. Schedule 1 has been like really weirdly popular on Steam. These drug games, these goddamn drug games, these games for you dopers out there. No, this is the genre of games where you make and sell drugs. Is like dumb. I don't know. They seem super stupid, most of them. Like this game, Schedule 1 is an early access. It is not drug dealer simulator levels of shitty, but it is not amazing either. But it is a game that opens with you like they really want you to go through the motions, and they have made these janky controls where like to water your plants when you're growing weed, you need to take the watering can and put it in the sink, and then you need to click on the faucet so that it fills up the thing, and then you get the thing and bring it over here, and then you need to push the A and D keys to tilt the watering can over so that it waters the spots, and then you use the mouse to make sure you're getting good coverage to water all the different places, and it's like it's a level of like, I don't know, accuracy, I guess you could say, that is not welcome. You don't need this. This could be a button press of, hey, water these plants. I have water. Would use it to water these plants. Okay, done. You know, like we don't necessarily need to go through this entire process of like, ha ha ha, I made it realistic. Or like, you have to go clip the buds off your plants, and then you have to go put the buds into plastic bags, and you have to use the mouse and pick up the bud and put it in the bag, and then click on the plastic bag to close it, and then you drag the plastic bag over to the bin, and then you do it again. And it's like, this is not like, these are not things that you simulate. Like when people make simulators, when people make games where they're simulating things, they still cut corners for things that are fucking boring. You know? So like it's, like it's precious that way, or it's cutesy that way, where they go, oh, look at what we did. We made it so you have to put the weed into the bag. And you're like, ha ha, yeah. Oh, wait, this sucks. You can drive vehicles, and there's skateboarding, and so the rest of the time when you were, out of your RV, or away from your drug growing operation, you then get messages from people who want to buy dope from you, and you schedule a time to meet them, and you go and you sell them stuff. And there are cops wandering around, and if the cops find you, you can you can take one item in your inventory and hide it, but only one. So if you have 2 items of contraband on you, the cops are going to find it, and then there'll be, drama. It's got some like online multiplayer stuff in it, which sounds like fun. Like it just seems like a dumb thing for you to goof around with your friends. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it seems like that is the that is the kind of specific thing that they're making here. And it's neat for what it is. But like, yeah, I don't know. Like, for as popular as it is, I just, it's in early access. And the direction that they're going with some of this stuff, I think, is kind of, again, maybe is precious the word? Like, it's this aspect of like, no, we're going to simulate you having to water the plants in this like overwrought kind of way. It's just like, you don't need to. It's just not something that is enhancing the game experience. It's like when GTA 3 came out and when Grand Theft Auto got big, it was like very novel, and you're like, oh my God, if I steal a taxi, I can do taxi missions, or if I steal a pizza delivery, I can deliver pizza. And you're like, I can't believe the depth of this game. But like, those were also designed missions and things you had to do. Like this aspect of like, oh, look, I have to pour the water myself. I need to do like, it just doesn't. Those aren't additions, or those aren't features that I think make the game better. They give the game almost like the illusion of depth and variety in a way that I think is cumbersome. And yeah, I don't know, deceptive, I guess I would say. Like it creates this deceptive level of depth that I think that does not benefit the game. And it's caught on in a streaming sense, but I don't know. Like it's that, I don't think that necessarily means it's a good game one way or bad game one way or the other. It's got some goofy bugs and stuff around, like if you stand in the bus stop and hammer the jump button over and over again and then take a step out, you'll launch into the air, because it's building up momentum from all the jumps that are, you're not able to jump because you're hitting the roof. And that actually is kind of fun in a doofy sort of way. It's a doofy game. I wouldn't necessarily call it like fun on its own. I think if you are, it probably makes sense why it's a successful streaming game, because I think there's a certain aspect to it that is like, it's a pretty thin as you go. And it's a sort of game that is probably better spent with you talking to someone else instead of focusing on the things that are actually happening. Yeah, I don't know. It's fine. I think Drug Dealer Simulator was a little more fleshed out in a lot of ways, but again, this is in early access, so obviously, it has more ways to go. But will it get there? Yeah, I mean, like, where does this game go? Like, if it's popular on Twitch right now, like that's kind of a weird concept. Like, if this game is blowing up right now and a bunch of people are streaming it, and it has a lot of very positive reviews, and so it seems to be selling quite well. Like, what do you do with that? Do you take the money and you polish it up? Is like the temptation would be to like create even more depth and even more, like way more to it. But like, is that will people see that by the time it takes you to develop it? Will people still be playing it? Will people still be streaming it? Or are you better served just kind of polishing up what's there a little bit and going like, okay, moving on? I don't know. It's a weird thing, because when you launch in early access, presumably you have some kind of roadmap in mind. But do you stick to that, or do you just go, actually, this maybe ended up being a bit of a flash in the pan, and yes, I could spend the next year and a half with the amount of money we just raised. I could spend 2 more years adding features to this game, but it's not going to suddenly, like, no one's going to notice, because the player count is, eventually falls off to a certain extent. I wonder, like, how that stuff works for folks. We've been playing more Nubby's Number Factory here in the house. It's a great game. Over the weekend, I was playing it, and my daughter saw me, and she wanted to play it. So I put her up on my lap and showed her how a mouse works, and how to, you need to hold down the right button and then push the left button to shoot, which she did with 2 hands. With her taking the shots and me guiding her on what items to buy, We hit, well, she blew me away on the high score. She fucking crushed me. Absolutely murdered my previous high score. So, and everyone was very excited to watch the sun explode when that finally happened. It's great at, like, she's 5 and she is reading more and more every day, but it is still, she's not like, she's fucking reading really well. But it takes her a little bit of time, and especially when there's a bunch of new words and everything, but she's really good at sounding things out now and all this other stuff. And every time she's asking me, which is the highest number here? And I'm like, well, take a look at them and you figure it out. And then I had to explain to her that K in this case means 1,000, and that tripped her up a little bit. But Nubby's Number Factory, weirdly enough, super educational game. Like, extremely, like, just from the numbers counting aspect to it, to like, okay, now how this works is every time the Nubby bounces off the walls, whatever's in slot 2 is going to fire. So what does slot 2 do? Is that a good thing? We want to make sure we put a good thing here so we can hit this number. And like, it was like I said, like I'm fucking blown away at how, again, the educational content of Nubby's Number Factory was off the chart, especially compared to Bluey and Paw Patrol and all this other horse shit that we've been playing. And my son's watching it, and he's like, he's 3, and he's not really, he's got his numbers down and letters and stuff like that, but he's not reading or anything at this point. And but he's transfixed by it and going, okay, now what do I do? I couldn't get him the mouse stuff. I couldn't just he couldn't grasp the launching the balls without some help. And I had my daughter try to teach him how to do it, which she was doing a really good job of, but he just the mouse is too big for his silly hands. Yeah, it was super fun. It was a really fun, like, Saturday morning of fooling around with that stuff. Nubby's Number Factory continues to be fantastic. So yeah, you should check that out, even if you don't need to teach kids numbers. Let's take our last break, and then we'll come back. We'll talk about Nintendo and everything that they are getting up to these days. Be right back. You got a few too many subscriptions in your life, or just like big bills that you're not necessarily looking to cancel, but you just look at them and go like, for this amount of money, I don't know. Rocket Money can help you look at this stuff and figure out what's what. They will tally up all your subscription services and let you know, not only, hey, you're paying for this, they'll let you, they can assist you in the cancellation of those services, which is handy. For some services, they can just get out there and do it for you. They'll ask you a couple of questions about like, oh, what's your account number? What's this? What's that? And they will go out there and they will make it happen. Same deal with lowering some of your bills. They will look at your bills and go like, hey, we see that you're paying, this satellite radio provider, for example, for a very specific example of mine, for me. We see that you're paying them hundreds of dollars a year. We think that if we talk to them, we can talk them down. Do you want us to do that? And then you say, abso-frickin-lutely. And then they go off and, it took maybe about a week, I'd say. A little less of them getting out there and talking. And then they came back and said, hey, by the way, we saved you $220 on that bill. I was like, word. And you can do the same. It's awesome. It's also like a really handy app. Like if you're just trying to wrap your mind around your finances and figure out like, where the heck is all this money going? But you're not looking for some heavy-handed, crazy solution. Rocket Money is fantastic. It will categorize your bills for you. It'll give you an easy way to categorize the ones that it looks at and goes like, we don't know what this is. What are you spending your money on? What's going on? Tell us about it. It's very easy to do that stuff. And you just connect up your bank accounts, your credit cards, and so on, and it lets you know money in, money out. Here, how are you doing? Are you spending more money than you did last month? We went on vacation this month, and Rocket Money was like, yo, you just spent this was a lot more money than last month. And I had to look at it and go like, yeah, I know. No, that's fine. That one's fine. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Oh, boy. I'll worry about it later. And it's fantastic. It's just a very good kind of easy read of your financial situation, alongside these premium features where they will go out there and they will fight for you to cancel some of this stuff, so you don't have to wait on the phone for an hour trying to figure it out, or to go through the stupid song and dance. Let them do the stupid song and dance for you. So you don't have to call up and go, I'm thinking about canceling, and then let them read their entire script about, how they're going to retain you, and, oh, we're sorry to lose you as a customer, and what if we gave you a deal? Let Rocket Money go hear all that stuff and solve it. Okay. You don't have time for it. You don't. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/JeffG today. That's rocketmoney.com/JeffG. rocketmoney.com/JeffG. All right, wrong button. I hit the wrong button. Nope. This is the right button. Here we are. Part 2. We're here for the news. Nintendo. You heard of these guys? They made the extendo hand thing. The love tester people. Hanafuda Jones. Welcome to the program. We're here to recap the past and future of Nintendo. Of Nintendo Company Limited. They made a video game system about a decade ago called the Nintendo Switch. You hold it in your hand. It's weird. But you can also hook it up to a TV. It can do both. It can do both. That was supposed to be the news theme. Close enough. Close enough. So yes, Nintendo held a Nintendo Direct last week, and kind of closing out what's left of the original Nintendo Switch software lineup, presumably from first party. And it was a banger. I think this is maybe one of the most exciting one of those they have done in terms of announcing upcoming games for the Nintendo Switch. Now I'm looking at it going like, this Nintendo Switch, they got some, this seems like kind of a cool platform. I should dust this thing off because they're going to make a new fucking Rhythm Heaven. Finally. You thought it wasn't possible. I thought it maybe wasn't possible. The series' longtime composer has he had was diagnosed with throat cancer a little over a decade ago now, and so there was a lot of talk about like, oh well, they're probably not going to make another one of these because he's dealing with this and all of that, and so that was always the thought of like why there was such a, whenever anyone would say, hey, when's the next Rhythm Heaven coming out, there was always this kind of uncomfortable like, yeah, I don't know that we're gonna necessarily see one of those because of this and yeah. But yeah, he has been making some appearances here and there with some of his other musical work. He had his vocal cords removed as part of this process. But he is here, and he is contributing to this new game, which is super exciting. And it's great to see this franchise continuing. And to see Sunku get a little bit of a shout out there inside of the Nintendo Direct was kind of cool as well. Not something that they kind of normally do when it comes to talking about who is actually making their video games. Not something Nintendo loves to get into these days. Who's actually making the games, right? They showed Metroid Prime 4, and yeah, they're going to make another Metroid Prime. You know, it looks fine. Watching it, I couldn't help but think like, it is maybe a little weird that it took so long for this game to pop out, because you look at it and go like, yeah, this looks like they're making another one of those. You're scanning, you're doing your thing. I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing. I don't mean that it. I don't mean to say that it doesn't look like something that players of that franchise will enjoy or whatever, but obviously they had a long road, because at one point Namco was making that game. And then that, I guess, got canned, and you know, I'm sure that there's some interesting stories there behind some of that stuff. But then Retro took it on, and they had to hire up, because I think they were still working on the remaster at some point. So anyway, the game looks fine. I don't know. People seem maybe a little muted about it. It's just the sort of thing like, if you want another one of those games, they're making another one of those games. It doesn't look like that there is some like universe altering mechanical thing happening here. The psychic abilities that they seem to be adding to it are fascinating, but like it looks like they're going to make another Metroid Prime, and that will probably be fine. Doesn't look incredible, but you know, again, this is the Nintendo Switch 1. So we're kind of sending it out a little bit here, but at the same time, like, you know, they announced a new Tomodachi Life. So, you know, that kind of, I don't know, the previous game was so much about like visiting apartments and all this other stuff, that like they're showing this crazy larger, you know, scale game with this really big lady in it, and all of the voice stuff is creepy in the most amazing way, and it's just it's tapping into something real filthy, inadvertently so, but there's going to be a lot of people that are real sickos about the giant lady in the Tomodachi Life trailer. They probably already exist. I mean, it's been days since that thing happened, so I'm sure that they're way ahead of me. But yeah, the game seems to imply that there will be some dreaming involved, and I don't know. There's some neat stuff afoot in that game. I never really thought that they would make another Tomodachi Life either. So it's like, it's cool to just see this happening. Like, even if it's squeaking out at the end, and you know, some of these games, you know, most of these games are not going to ship until well after the Switch 2 is out. And so it's really just this kind of like these crossover, you know, like kind of late releases. But super exciting. I don't know, like that trio of games. Like, I'm not a Metroid Prime guy. I just never was. But I came to kind of, I guess, respect to the franchise finally when that remaster came out. I you know, with kind of just a little bit better control, a little bit more normal control, I guess I would say. The remaster really kind of helped that game click into place for me in a way that it just never did before through the previous trilogy. Even when they would go like, oh, now it's got these different controls. Like, this all still feels like shit. I don't want to do this. Controllers have 2 analog sticks now. It's not, you know, the N60. Even when you first started making these things, your controller had 2 analog sticks on them. But like, you made it like it was an N64 game, you lunatics. So yeah, there's a you know, it's always been kind of a weird franchise for me, for a couple of reasons. I mean, both mechanically and also like everything they did story-wise in those games, I found to be about as off-putting as it could possibly be. Like any time spent trying to flesh out the Metroid lore, it felt like time wasted because everything they came up with was some of the dumbest shit I've ever seen. And seeing people get like way into the Metroid lore through the Prime games, I was just like, this is fucking dumb. So you know, whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I'm interested in seeing that game. But I would say the thing that has me interested in Metroid Prime 4 is less the game itself and more what they will do with it when it comes to the Switch 2. There was a variety of third-party games shown at the Direct as well. Rise the Necrodancer kind of came out, and we get the Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD, and the Chuckyfish, Harry Potter without the transphobia thing that looked pretty good. Presumably they're not putting any of that in there. Maybe they will. I don't know. But that looked all right. Witchbrook, yes, that's what it was called. There's a Gradius collection. A lot of the stuff also was like multi-platform. They showed like Patapon is coming to the Switch, and so that was a weird one. That's one of the ones that's going to end up being multi-platform. And Hot Shots Golf, or Everybody's Golf Hot Shots, or whatever weird combo name they've settled on. And so yeah, there's that stuff's neat. It's neat to see, like, Namco is doing development on that from the looks of things, which is sort of weird. You have these like Sony franchises that they're just like outsourcing to Namco of all people. But hey, okay, that stuff is exciting. A good variety of indie games and stuff like that coming. Eternal Life of Goldman, which is kind of like sort of looked like a DuckTales. It mechanically looked like a DuckTales. And what else? Shadow, was it Shadow Labyrinth or Secret Labyrinth? Shadow Labyrinth, the Pac-Man search action game where Pac-Man is like you got to feed your mag and it's Pac-Man, it's Puck, and it's, I don't know, he runs around with you while you're doing stuff, or floats around with you while you're doing stuff. Interesting looking thing. I don't know, man. Like, I look at that and go like, I'm not sure that that's going to actually be a good game, but at least it's interesting. They should have called it Pac-Man 3 to just, keep up with this idea of like occasionally they do a numbered sequel to Pac-Man that makes no sense compared to what came before it. Yeah, I don't know. I think that would have been a cooler way for them to go with it, but whatever. All told, it was a good presentation. It was like 40 minutes of stuff. They announced the Nintendo Today app, which is like a funny phone app that they then very quickly used to reveal the release date of the Legend of Zelda movie. I installed it this morning. What's going on with Nintendo Today? Let's open up this app here. Nothing. It's a picture of Mario, and it just says, enjoy your day. This is not a calendar app that you can use to look at your events and appointments and things. This does not tap into the calendars on your phone. It is merely Nintendo having a way to tell you things about the stuff that they are doing. It is their calendar. And so when you scroll down a little bit, it says 1 day to go until the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct. And then you scroll down a little further, and it's like, here's a guide to the world of Super Mario. World 1, Super Mario Brothers. And so they're advertising this as, we're going to have new stuff every day. But Okay. So the Mario thing is it's just some pictures of World 1 of Super Mario Brothers. Tip. This feels like such a reaction. This feels like someone at Nintendo saw the internet and went, "Wait a minute. We should do that. Why are we doing this on other platforms?" And so it makes sense in the context of like the implosion of social media, right? As Twitter becomes like way more of a cesspool and you know, and people splinter out into all these other platforms, and you don't necessarily have like one direct pipeline to every single person that, you know, you want to know about your brand because it's splintered across all these other different websites. Like, it makes weird sense for Nintendo to say, "Oh, we're gonna just make our own fucking thing, and if you want to know about it, then download our stuff, and you can be guaranteed to hear it directly from us." Much the same way that a lot of publishers stopped giving interviews to the media and started their own YouTube channels, you know, a decade, 15 years earlier or whatever. It feels like a kind of a weird wraparound on that. But like so this World 1 thing is Guide to the World of Super Mario, the first world of the Mushroom Kingdom. Goombas and Koopa Troopas stand in your way in challenging courses above and below ground. That's it. Oh, and then we scroll down here. Tip. Climb above the last ceiling using the lift in World 1-2 to find pipes leading to World 2, 3, and 4. So it's like they saw the fucking dumb TikTok videos that are like, "Did you know if you hold down A and press start, you can continue?" And now they're just including the fucking dumbest basic tips for their old ass video games here. It's just fucking weird. What a weird... the world is broken. What did we do? But it asks you what you're into. It actually has like a weirdly... It's a weird list of properties that you can kind of opt into, and I just kind of checked every single one, and it's like Mario, Zelda, Metroid, Pikmin, WarioWare, Splatoon, Fire Emblem might have been, and then you get to the bottom and it's just classics. There was no other. There was no like, show me, I want to hear the information about ARMS 2. When you announce ARMS 2, I want to know about it. Like, there was no selection for ARMS. So yeah, I don't know. It's a very strange application that, like, I think on paper makes a lot of sense, but ultimately, how much information does Nintendo have to share on a regular basis? Like, this just feels like something you install and then it'll send notifications when they've got things to say, I suppose. Which is a weird, I don't know. I don't like it as a precedent of just like, I'm going to install a zillion different apps from people so that I can get these updates. Like, I don't like that conceptually. Nintendo is large enough that they can get away with it. And also, I suppose I would say that Microsoft and Sony already kind of have this covered because they have actual online services and storefronts and all of this other stuff that they have put into their applications. And as a result of that, they have a pipeline where they can say, "Hey, by the way, this came out today," or "Hey, this is leaving Game Pass soon," or whatever. Like, Nintendo doesn't really have an equivalent to that because all of their online shit has been garbage for the most part. So I guess it makes sense for them to have an app where they can send notifications about new Nintendo news along the way. So yeah, I don't know. A strange but like a very Nintendo-like solution, I suppose, to addressing its customers on the modern internet. Of course, tomorrow morning is the day that we will finally hear about the Nintendo Switch 2. So they've said that video is going to be an hour long. They've also said that they're going to have some Treehouse stuff with gameplay from the games a little later in the week. but the primary kind of announcement of here's what we're doing and all of that is going to be an hour at 6 a.m. tomorrow. I am going to wake up and watch it. I'll stream that. We'll get together. We'll watch it. So what do you think? What are your Switch 2 predictions? I want to see some in the chat on the Discord. I kind of want to see some of this stuff, but like one of the videos they posted, I guess, on the Japanese version of the Nintendo app focused on the Switch 2's C button. What does the C button do? There's been a lot of weird speculation about what that thing is going to do. Does it open up a community thing? Is it for voice chat, some kind of universal voice chat? It's like below the home button, so it's like not in the easiest spot to reach. Is it a capture button? I saw someone say, oh, when you push this button, it will connect to a Switch 1, and then you can use the Switch 1 as a controller for Switch 2 games, which I don't think that makes a lot of sense. They've also already got another capture button on the other side, so like having two of them doesn't make much sense. But also they went out of their way to focus on it today in a way that says that they have some answer to that question coming soon, and also that it is some kind of feature, that it's not something as basic as take a screenshot or whatever. The speculation that it was going to be a button you push to connect it to a Switch 1 just seems, I don't know, like, you know, are you going to play, are you casting games to the Switch 1? Are they getting a different screen on their end so you can play weird multiplayer games with one copy of a game? Is it something they're going to use to like, is it something that they'll use to, you know, hey, you can play Switch 2 games on a Switch 1. If you only have one copy of the game, we can kind of cast a copy of it to the Switch 1 via video streaming, and then you can play Mario Kart multiplayer. Like, is it something weird like that? Like, I don't, that doesn't sound, none of these answers sound, some of them sound very underwhelming, and some of them sound a little bit too far-fetched. So I don't know what the real answer is here. Presumably we'll find out, but it is a weird, it is one of the few weird things left for Switch 2, right? I think, you know, the rest of it has been pretty straightforward. And so, yeah, it almost seems like it would have to be like, yeah, you can cast it like, hey, if you have the dock hooked up to your TV, you can cast it to the dock while still playing undocked, which why would you? I guess you could do that. That's only cool if the two screens can show something different and you're playing multiplayer games in a weird way, right? I don't think that having a casted version of the game running on the TV when you could just dock it and use a regular controller, I just don't think that like warrants a full button. I don't know. Yes, what if you can take a Switch 1 and they sell a big plastic contraption that you can snap a Switch 2 and a Switch 1 into it and bolt them together like a gigantic DS? Sure. Let's say probably not. But that would be a weird, insane thing they could do. It's not in a finger position where it seems like something you're going to hit like mid game, like important, you know, like, oh, while you're, you know, in the middle of heated gaming sessions. It seems like something that like, hey, you're going to kind of cast one screen over here, and if those screens can see something different, then maybe there's something to that. But because then you get to Pac-Man versus, right? You get to more things that are, you know, more kind of weird asymmetrical multiplayer like PlayStation VR could do, where it would cast a different screen to the TV than you would see in the headset. Like those sorts of solutions open up the idea of a specific type of multiplayer game. That specific kind of asymmetrical, you're going to carry the bucket and we're not kind of video gaming that we don't get a lot of anymore. On console platforms. I mean, like a PC, once you get online, that's a whole thing. But like the idea of local multiplayer where people are seeing different things, but they don't all have their own version of the system. So it's not like full on local multiplayer the way you would expect with, any Nintendo handheld. Yeah, well, I don't know. Like there's something to it. Again, they're making a point to highlight it as like, look at this mysterious thing, which says to me the answer has to be something unique and not something as easy as just like, you push the button and you can bring up a little mouse cursor. Like I think it has to kind of be something new. That doesn't mean it's going to be good or interesting, but I think it at least kind of has to be something new here. Presumably they'll also finally show the mouse stuff in action. I guess they never officially confirmed, hey, that's what that is, but that's what that is. I think for me, the question, and maybe this is answered by close-up shots of the controllers that have since leaked out or something, but I believe that both Joy-Cons have sensors on the bottom of them or on the sides of them. So I believe you can do dual mouse with it. I'm not 100% on that one, but that to me, again, as we discussed back when a lot of this stuff we were first talking about it, I think that opens up the world for a really cool mech game. Double mouse, you get some interesting tank controls, some interesting kind of mech style movement that I think you would get if you're able to use them both at the same time. If you're only using one, then I'm sure that that's a situation where like, hey, if you wanted to use the left, you can use the left. If you want to use the right, you can use the right. Maybe a multiplayer game would use them both, but I suspect it's up to developers as to how they want to use that stuff and maybe how they would integrate that into their games, because it's something that Nintendo has made and they don't necessarily, they certainly have their solutions for how they would want to use it in their first party stuff. But I bet when it comes to third parties, you'll be able to probably do a few different things depending on what the game warrants. Right. And so I wonder, like, what would be the big showcase games for a mouse, and what would be the big showcase games for mouse support on a Switch 2? I think Metroid Prime 2 is probably the game you get and show a lot of that demo stuff of like, hey, you can play this game. And it'll give them an opportunity to show like, hey, it's really high DPI, and so it's really sensitive. They're not going to force you to fucking bust out a mouse pad wherever you are. Like you're taking this thing to your rooftop party. You don't have a mouse pad. You're going to need to be able to use it on a variety of surfaces and your shirt and like wherever it feels good. And so they're going to need to show that stuff off, I think, as well. I think if they ended up showing a new Splatoon, that would be a solid place to show some mouse stuff. In the off chance that they decide to do another Mario Maker, which I'm really not sold on, just as a concept that they would do that. I think that's a game that would potentially benefit from a mouse. But I think if I had to guess what we'll see just like straight up tomorrow, I think you'll see them using that thing with Metroid. They will spend a little bit of time, like Metroid ends up being the kind of showcase game for it that they use to kind of debut the feature, and show it in game and show how you might control that. And like, hey, you can hold this other Joy-Con here and then use this one as a mouse, and so you're using this one to do your movement and this one to do your aiming and whatever, kind of working that way. And I bet they show Civ. And I bet that they say Civ will have mouse support. You could also, like this would also maybe be a good opportunity to show Fortnite. I think that Fortnite is obviously a big enough game that they will want to say up front, yes, Fortnite is coming to Switch 2, and it's not just a port, or it's not just a backwards compatible thing. Like, yes, we're going to do a Switch 2, a native Switch 2 version of Fortnite, and maybe they end up doing something there with it. Obviously, when you get into competitive multiplayer games, there is a lot of control issues around competitive fairness and so on, and how all of that will work. I think it would behoove them to have a third party presence at this thing. Maybe they have enough stuff to fill an hour with system details and like the handful of games that'll be available right at launch. But I think that if they end up, unless they very specifically try to avoid third party completely and say, oh, we're going to have a third party thing. But I think that this will be this is probably going to be the embargo like moment for third parties, right? Especially if this thing is shipping in June. Like Nintendo has obviously, like, just look at the dearth of, like, there's nothing happening out there, right? Like, no one's out there saying, hey, only like lunatics and very small, like, and we're making our game for the Switch too. And like, you're like, oh, okay, those guys, all right. Everyone else is very likely to be under NDA. Otherwise they would have said a lot of shit by now, right? Especially for something that's going to be coming out in June. And so I think this is probably where the floodgates open on any kind of third-party support. And even if they're not in this video, we probably get a lot of announcements of like, hey, by the way, this game is also coming to Switch 2. This game, whether it's Metal Gear, whatever it is, I don't know. But like this would be the time, I think, for third parties to start talking. And so I think that's probably, to me, that says that I think you would probably pick a very small handful of third-party games, ones that you think would be, if I were building this showcase, I would look at it and say, okay, what are the third-party games that we think really showcase the unique features of the Switch 2? Meaning anything that's going to have like meaningful mouse support or whatever. Or what are some games that people would be surprised to see on this platform from a like capability standpoint? Like, hey, by the way, the Switch 2 can run this game, and the Switch 2, hey, Doom the New Age is coming to Switch 2, whatever. Like, hey, we've ported this engine to this, and maybe you get a 5-second talk from someone saying like, oh yeah, Unreal Engine 5 runs great on it, like blah 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 blah, and then they go right on to showing more gameplay or something. That's not a very Nintendo-like way to do a presentation, but I think that, like, again, they're revealing a system here. There's more to it than just first party. There's more to it than just games. So yeah, I mean, the shocker and shock maybe isn't the thing, but like Call of Duty would be a really interesting thing for them to have and show if they've got it, if they've got anything up and running. I think that would be a really interesting one for them to have, because that's something that they can touch. That's something that if that game is ported properly and whatever, you could touch on a lot of different aspects of the Switch 2 at that point. In terms of like, hey, by the way, you can play this with a mouse if you want. Just like all the other versions of Call of Duty. Like, you can plug a mouse into an Xbox or a PlayStation, if you want to do it. Do I think there's any chance of GTA 6 on the Switch 2? I think there's a chance. I think there's certainly a chance. Do I think it's something that would happen simultaneously with the other versions they've been working on? Given the timetables involved, I would probably say no. But like, I think the third party story on Switch 2 obviously is yet to be written, right? Because this is all going to be so new. But I do think that, Take-Two is in the business of making money. And I think if the Switch 2 is capable of running some version of it, Like it may not be, maybe they don't achieve parity. And maybe that's the thing that actually keeps it off in general now that I'm talking my way through it. Because ultimately, like, you know, if they're putting GTA on a platform, they want to be able to make money with GTA Online. And they probably don't want to saddle themselves into a platform that won't be able to handle it long term. If it ends up being a lot of work to port to Switch 2, which, you know, keep in mind that GTA 6 will have to run on an Xbox Series S already. Not that there is parity there, but, you know, they will be dealing with multiple targets already with GTA 6. You could envision a scenario where they do it. How will it run? How will all that, like that? I think a lot of that remains to be seen. I think we need to kind of see. We need to kind of see how people take to the platform and what sort of work they do and what they get out of it, right? Like as you know, developers have had their hands on this stuff for quite a while, and they've been working on their games. And you know, out of the gate, we'll probably see some stuff that looks pretty damn good for a handheld, and we'll be surprised by some of that, I think, to a certain extent. But at the end of the day, if we're thinking about the next 10 years of video games, you know, how quickly does the Switch 2 age? We talked a lot about this when it all got announced. You know, publishers and developers are tired of not making money. They want to make money. Some of them are making a lot of money and still laying people off. But ultimately, games, the cost of game development and how crazy it has been at the kind of high-end AAA level is something that a lot of people are thinking about constantly. Of, you know, how can we bring these costs down? What do we need to do? And I think that there is probably a story to be told involving the Switch 2 and developing for the Switch 2 that, you know, could make it sound like a relatively attractive place to put your game. Assuming that it sells well, right? I mean, there was, you know, I saw, I forget where it was, but someone had kind of posed the question like, hey, what happens if the Switch 2 doesn't sell? What happens if people don't want it? And what if Nintendo kind of does bungle this? And, you know, from this aspect of like, well, they don't really have a plan B. To which I would say, hey, you know, yeah, that's, you know, then we end up with another kind of Wii U style generation, and Nintendo survived that as well. But also, I think it'll end up doing fine. I don't know. Like maybe it sells well out of the gate, and then people realize they hate it, and word of mouth is super bad, and it ends up, you know, missing the mark or something, or doesn't sell as dramatically positively as they thought it would, or something. But I don't know. At the time, the Wii U did not seem like a bad system. In the early days of Wii U, it didn't necessarily seem like a terrible idea. Like people were like, oh, the name is confusing. And a lot of people really honed in on that, which, you know, maybe to an extent that was true. But like the Wii U, I think the Wii U was just a weird launch. I think like the reason why people were a little sour on Wii U out of the gate is because a lot of its third-party games were games that came out on 360 like years previous. You know, it wasn't like the newest, latest. It was like, here's some shit that we made. Here's fucking Batman. I don't know. Fuck you. Here's Batman Armored Edition, and here's Mass Effect, and here's the, you know, like the third-party support was tepid out of the gate. And then on the first-party side, you had Nintendo Land, which is not a great game. It never was. And so I think that, you know, those are the sorts of things that kind of impacted the Wii U out of the gate. So that becomes the question then, like, you know, will the third party support for the Switch 2 be a little more contemporary with other platforms? Will it be a little more, or will, you know, are we going to see a bunch of like old games showing up on Switch 2 kind of clogging it up a little bit? I was like, I suspect we will see a lot more kind of recent games on the Switch 2 and not like it was with Wii U. First party, they've already shown Mario Kart. So from a sales perspective, unless that game is absolute trash, it's hard to envision a scenario where that doesn't move units, because as we all know at this point, Mario Kart is like the best selling thing they have had for generations. Terrifyingly so. It's like it's baffling to look at. Like, I'm not saying anything about the quality of Mario Kart or whatever, but I just, when you think about games that Nintendo puts out and the big ones that Nintendo puts out, like Mario Kart is not usually the first game that comes to mind. But Mario Kart 8 is like one of the biggest fucking games in the world. And you're like, oh my God, like it fucking destroys games like Smash Brothers are not even in the same league, like Mario and Zelda and stuff. Like those games sell very well, but they ain't no Mario Kart. So them launching with Mario Kart, I think, is a very smart move on their part. I personally would love to see an early Animal Crossing on this platform. I think that is another move they could make. I've said this a couple of times now, but I think that going with a Mario with an Animal Crossing at or near launch, I think is a thing that maybe it wouldn't hit as hard as they thought it would, but when they were making decisions about what games to make for Switch 2, that was probably right around the time that the previous Animal Crossing was blowing up and taking over the internet, because everyone was, it was, the pandemic was happening and all of that. Like, I think that the circumstances that made Animal Crossing as big as it was are impossible to duplicate. But I also think that that would be a very good reason for them to greenlight a very early Animal Crossing for Switch 2. That's my logic there anyway. So, and I would love to see a new Animal Crossing within some specific parameters that involve not doing a lot of the things they did in the last one. But yeah, I would love to see those couple of things. I think you got to have a 3D Mario game, man. Right? It feels weird to not do it. It feels weird for, like it would feel weird if we come out of tomorrow without some kind of big 3D Mario thing. Whether it's, I don't know, I was going to say Odyssey 2, but I don't know. But yeah, does Splatoon make sense as an early game? Keep in mind, like, look at the release schedule for the Switch and which studios have been making those games, and you can start to back into, you can start to walk your way into kind of an educated guess territory about how long some of Nintendo's teams have been working on brand new games for the Switch 2. A lot of those studios moved over a while ago, and so there is every possibility that they've got fucking a hot lineup for year one. You don't launch all of that out the gate. You don't go day one with every single game you got, right? But I do think that when you look at the studios that Nintendo, the way they organize their studios, when you look at the last time they shipped a game and start to line up some of these timetables about when we started hearing about Switch 2 and blah, 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 I think you walk into a real quick area where you go like, oh yeah, right. They could have been working on this the entire time. And so I would expect like relatively a good paced launch of games for the first year, which is more or less what they did with the Switch, and I think it really worked out in their favor. With a good mix of like big games and new stuff. ARMS was not a hit, right? Well, ARMS was year one, right? Or am I crazy? At some point, it all runs together, but like, what about that online thing that they ran the test of on Switch 1? Does that the kind of vanished? Like, people leaked it and they ripped the soundtrack out of it and all of this other stuff. Like, does that end up being some kind of launch game Does that end up existing in any form, or did they kill it? Like there's a lot of things that could happen to something like that, right? Their weird online thing. So yeah, I think that they've got a lot of, and they've got a lot of room to wiggle, because I think that they're in a situation where, if they're doing Mario Kart at launch, presumably they hit some of the other big marks there with a Mario and a Zelda. Like, is it too soon for a Zelda? Maybe, but also the last one was sort of built on the one before that, so you could probably say that, like, oh, there was a team in pre-production on the next actual Zelda sequel at the time that the last one was being made. There's ways they could stagger that out in ways that they maybe could still hit year one with it. Yeah, sure. Luigi's Mansion, maybe Luigi's Mansion. But my point is that there's room for smaller games in there as well, like a Luigi's Mansion. It's fun to say, what if they did a Kid Icarus Uprising remake, and more people keep saying that. But, like, I am kind of talking about that, right? There is this idea of, like, okay, if they've got the big bases covered, they need to have something underneath. You need to have a mid-card, if you will. And there's no reason other than that people might not be into it, but, like, sure, you could do a new Kid Icarus game in there. You could make that make sense from a scheduling perspective. I don't know that that's the best move they could make, but, like, things of that nature, like, a new Star Fox or something. Something that is under, Captain Toad. A new Kirby. It would be weird to have a big new Kirby game right at launch and not at the end. But I do think that it affords them the ability to mess around a little bit, and I do think that they want to have they'll want to have something that seems new, and maybe that online game is the thing, and that's new, and they go, well, this is enough, but it does seem like something. It does seem like an opportunity, right? Because they're going to launch with big guns, and it'll be a great opportunity for them to try to introduce something new and hope that it catches on, or bring back something that they haven't done in a while and hope that it kind of catches fire, because everything will sell well at launch, and regardless, right? Well, just about, but it's a good time for them to experiment ever so slightly, because they'll have coverage from on high. So I think they're in a pretty good position. I really think that, like, if you look at the lineup and I think people have been complaining about the Switch's software release cadence for a good long time now. And if you take that as a sign, not that, like, oh, a lot of these games have been in troubled development cycles or whatever, but I think if you take that and instead say, oh, it's because more and more of these studios have been rolling over onto Switch 2 games, and maybe they've been working on them for a lot longer than you think. I think that there's a very strong possibility that they've got a fucking murderers row. Easy for you to say. They've got all the potential for a absolutely killer lineup before we even get into whatever the third parties are doing, right? Because I think that third parties will have an appetite for Switch 2. They would have had one already, right? Because games sell well at launch, and Ubisoft is going to save the company with whatever they fucking sell on the Switch 2. But again, I think if you set that against the backdrop of where the video game industry is at right now, in terms of being really, like, worried about the overall cost of game development and port work and all this other stuff, I think for some publishers that may line up in a way that they may find themselves supporting Switch 2 more strongly than they supported Switch 1. That could lead to a situation where they go, like, actually, maybe it behooves us to target Switch 2. As long as the sales are there, as long as Nintendo is a good partner and they don't just bury us with their own first-party games, which they like to do. Granted, they do that a lot. But maybe they spend more time making sure that their Switch 2 version is actually a good version of the game, as opposed to it being this kind of cast off afterthought that would come after the fact. And they'd be like, well, I guess we're going to put Mortal Kombat 1 on the Switch. I guess we're going to do that. Like the team's not going to touch it. We're outsourcing it and whatever. Like, so maybe it ends up being a situation where more Western developers do that. In Japan, you know, I think, I'm not going to say Japan is sewed up, but like, dude, Japanese developers, I think, could have supported the Switch 1 a little bit better. Maybe should have in some cases. Maybe there's a little bit of money on the table in some of those cases, but like, I don't know. I think that, you know, and I don't know for sure about this stuff, but I just, there's a feeling, I think, with where the video games are at, with where the industry is at, I think there's a real opportunity that if all of this stuff lines up the way it could, that it could lead to a kind of a dramatic shift in how developers are thinking about platforms and what order and all of that, in a way that they haven't up till this point. And so I think you could see a real shift in the way a lot of things work in favor of the Switch, which I think ends up benefiting this quest for handhelds that everyone else is on. Obviously, Nintendo has already been there, but like, as Microsoft gets more and more into this idea of even more SKUs of different varying degrees of power that they don't even control because they're just fucking PCs, you know, just like third parties making an Xbox, quote unquote. And as Sony, I think, goes a little bit further down the road on their stuff and makes a handheld, they're going to have to contend with, you know, multiple SKUs and multiple power, you know, multiple bands of power for some of their releases as well. You're going to end up in a point where those developers are already making big games for this platform, and that they maybe will benefit from it a little bit better, and so on and so forth. Jedi Mass 4 says the era of big graphics is over. It's not, but again, look at the Steam hardware survey, look at what kind of graphics cards people have, all of that. Like, the era of big graphics is not over. It never will be. You're always going to need something for the back of a box. Back to when they were putting Amiga screenshots on the back of Commodore 64 boxes, we have always needed some high-end murder machine that you can look at and go, holy shit, and your machine doesn't run it anywhere like that. But someone's does, somewhere. But that doesn't need to be consoles, because consoles need to be at least something resembling affordability. I would argue that the $700 PlayStation 5 Pro is not something I would refer to as affordable. But I think if you set it against the idea of a graphics card that might cost $4,000 on its own, then yeah, okay. Maybe $700 for a PS5 Pro. Like, yeah, guess what? It doesn't run games as well as a 5090 or even a 4090, but hey, still runs them. So with all of that in mind, and all of the hand wringing, and then you know, at some point we do get to tariff talk, and there's been some speculation that Nintendo has been importing Switch 2s for a very long time into warehouses in the States, and that they've already got a bunch here, and so they may not have to deal with that up front. And maybe that's something they have to deal with a year in or something, or a month in if they sell them all, you know. But if that is true, if that is true, and they have been filling warehouses with them already, then you know, maybe they get around the tariffs for a while and then they hit them later. Or maybe the tariff problem will be solved by then. I have my doubts. That seems like a pit that is just getting deeper and dumber as time goes on. But you know, I don't know. Maybe someone eventually says, "Hey, you realize you're fucking oh, okay, yeah, no, probably not." There is a solution to that. Anyway. So yeah, I don't know. Like that, those are market forces. Those are forces kind of outside of anyone's control, and they're going to impact everybody, right? Like that's something that, yes, we can talk about the Switch in those terms. But like that's something that is eventually going to impact PlayStation and Xbox and everyone, right? In a variety of ways. So we'll have to just wait and see how any of that stuff ends up going. It's not worth too much speculation on that front, because again, a lot of it is just out of everyone's hands. So that leaves us with like price, you know. I think some people have been trying to say what, like somewhere between 400 and like 499. I think 499 is the highest price that I've seen anyone speculate about. And that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. So I 449, does that end up sounding better? Like it sure does, but at the end of the day, I think even that, I would love to see a 399, but I think that's tough. But I have no idea. I have no idea. I mean, it all depends on what the guts are, and you know, we can start to, you know, like if you start looking like the materials that are going into it, because some chunk of that leaked, you know, like what the specs are or what the, you know, the processor and whatever, you could try to walk your way into something that makes sense and try to work at it from there. But Fuzzy Assassin says, internet sleuths allege that the shipments leaving Vietnam claim $338 for export cost per unit. So I mean, I would say that sounds like 450 to me at a minimum, but I don't know. I don't know how much money they want to make on these things. A lot is how much they want to make on these things, it turns out. But retailer cuts and all that other stuff, like, you know, yeah, you end up, yeah. Regardless, they'll sell them. You know, there are still, you know, like people still do have discretionary income for that sort of stuff. So I don't think that whatever they do on the hardware front will impact them early on, right? Early adopters are early adopters, and they will pay for it. Everyone in the chat seems in agreement that all these games are going to cost $70 now, which, yeah, I think that's the market, like the industry has absorbed that just fine. It hasn't necessarily, it doesn't really seem like that price raise prevented games from selling. I have not seen anyone blame, you know, any kind of financial failings on the high price of a video game. Yeah, Tears of the Kingdom was $70 and sold just fine. So even Nintendo has gotten away with it, and I think that, yeah, the ship sailed on that, and we'll almost certainly see $70 for probably the vast majority of games. Maybe you end up in a situation where, like, hey, we're doing this remaster and it's not a full, you know, we'll maybe see a little bit more varied pricing, especially now that digital sales are, you know, continuing to grow and grow from the looks of things. You know, that opens up the ability to, you know, you remove the manufacturing costs at that point, so you don't have to worry about those factors. You can just say, oh, well, you know, for this game, it costs us less to make it. We can, you know, we can sell it for 50 or whatever. A nice discount price of $50. Oh man, that sounds terrible. And we'll see if they can stave off scalpers, man. That's, I think, the biggest issue. You know, let's assume this thing launches in June. There's been some speculation about when pre-orders will start. With, I think, Best Buy Canada was reporting that they would start on the 9th, and there was another retailer leak that said they were going to start tomorrow. I don't know what the answer is. It's probably one of those two things. I would put, if I had to bet, if I had to guess, I would say that they will not start pre-orders tomorrow. That's my guess. Is that they will give you a week, they will give you some time. Like April 9th sounds like a reasonable time for them to start if they're gonna ship this thing in June, which seems to be what a lot of the leaks are saying, as far as release date. But I could see them giving you, a few days buffer. Maybe the 9th ends up being right. Maybe it ends up being Friday. Like, but I do think that they're not going to like play this video at 6 a.m. and then be like, all right, go pre-order one now. Because that'll just be, I don't know. That seems like a disaster. Will they do a bundle with a pack-in game controller? Like, do they do 2 SKUs? Do they do a $4.99 and a $3.99? I don't think so. I think they keep it simple. I think they don't necessarily need to separate it out. I think if they do a pack-in game, it ends up being something small. I think if they were to do, like, there's a good showcase game, right? If they had a good game that was like, here's something that shows off some of the things that this system does, a Snipper Clips style equivalent. I think that would be a smart pack-in, like a simple kind of thing that shows off the features of the system. Pack in Mario Paint. Like, Mario Paint shouldn't be a game. If they end up doing a Mario Paint, that should be a system level feature that's just built in. Like, here you go. You want to paint? Go for it. Like, that should just be something that you can just do. What if the C button is like a telestrator functionality? What if you can draw on the screen with the mouse? I don't know. That's not a good solution either. But like, what if it's like, hey, we can kind of, if you need to draw on a map or something like that, like, you can use the mouse to do it and go that way. I don't know. Probably not. Does Nintendo do $10 upgrades for Switch 1 games on Switch 2? I don't know that they need to do it. I think if they end up doing significant work to some games, then maybe, but I don't really see them doing that. I don't see them needing to do it. These feel like, I don't know, the number of Switch 1 games that get upgrades, I feel like would be relatively small, and they would not be interested in doing dramatic work to them. I think if there is if there is some sort of upgrade, like what people would want is, like, what if these Pokemon games didn't run like garbage? What if the frame rates on these games were better? Like, that's the dramatic thing. And then that's not something that, I mean, ideally their backwards compatibility is just going to take care of that auto-magically, right? It's just like, hey, between faster clock speeds and blah, 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 like, we just were able to do this. We downloaded a copy of Yuzu. We looked at it. Went, man, wow. And so they're able to, like, just kind of do some of that minor work, right? I mean, minor, but, take advantage of the greater power of the Switch 2 in minor ways like that, without having to have dramatic patches to the games. And I don't think that anything less than that justifies a $10 upgrade fee or something like that. I don't see Nintendo doing that. If there were situations where they were like, hey, we're going to do another dramatic shift or hey, we're going to also do a bunch of DLC, we're going to do a bunch of that. If they were to decide to make deluxe versions of Switch 1 games, I could see them offering an upgrade path there, but that's almost akin to them saying, hey, we're going to sell you another season pass or something like that. Like, let's say Smash Brothers. Let's say they just continue to build upon Ultimate rather than delivering a brand new game. You wouldn't pay $10 just to run it on a Switch 2 at like a better resolution, or I mean, whatever, that has to remain compatible with other platforms from a competitive standpoint. So they wouldn't be able to do dramatic things there anyway. But, you could envision a scenario where they go, oh, and hey, these new characters are only going to be playable on Switch 2, and that'd be a bad solution. That wouldn't work either. But whatever, you could see them re-releasing that game on Switch 2 with some, some updates and selling another like few seasons of DLC if they can come up with the characters at this point. Who do you even put in that thing that's not in it already? I don't know. Dojin the Giant. I don't know. This is who else would you put? Who else would you even put in that thing? Like from first party. I mean, yeah, sure. You could do guest characters all day long. But like who are the first party dudes and ladies that are not in it? You put Pauline in there or something. I don't know, I guess there's always stuff. Waluigi. Yes, something from Custom Robo or whatever. Yeah. Put some guys from ARMS in there. Why not? So yeah, whatever. We'll find out soon enough. It's exciting. I'm hopeful that this I hope that we see the dramatic shift that I'm kind of talking about. I hope that we see something that actually kind of changes the video game industry a little bit, because I think, and I don't mean just a vibe shift. I mean, that this is something that can like financially impact developers long term in a way that we don't always see out of third party Nintendo. I think that something needs to change on that front. For the betterment of the video game industry, right? I think that's just sort of more necessary now than maybe it was last time around. And I think Nintendo is poised to take advantage of the current landscape in ways that they were not previously. So yeah, we'll see. Right? Yes, hopefully they clean up the eShop. Hopefully they rebuild the eShop in ways that make it less susceptible to people saying our game is $3,000, but it's 99% off, and then it shows up at the top of the sales list. Like the way that people are scamming positioning on the eShop and all of that. Like, hopefully that's stuff that gets. I mean, that needs to be fixed on the existing Switch. I don't know, like. Whatever. Alma asks, do you like the Switch online system or do you miss the virtual console? I don't think I care. I don't like that's ultimately I don't necessarily want to use either of those things to play old games, because I have a garage full of old games. There are a lot of ways to play old games. And so I don't necessarily think that either option on Nintendo's platforms are great. That said, I think, I would prefer the option to purchase that stuff over the subscription route, or rather, I guess like I would want to see it. Either way, I want to see that stuff updated more frequently and a greater array of options. And that's something that probably makes sense only if they're selling the games, because, if they added every game they could to the online thing, then maybe that would be weird. Maybe we get GameCube games on the Switch too at this point. At this point, why not? I don't think they'll change it. I don't think that they will roll out any kind of like virtual console. I don't see them changing the track that they're on when it comes to the old game stuff, because I don't think that there's enough. I think they're doing fine with what they're doing. And I don't think that there are enough players who are just like, if you were selling these, I would get them this way, but I'm not going to subscribe to your thing. Like, I think as a subscription add-on, it seems like it's working out okay for them. I guess I don't have any numbers in front of me, but, but thinking about the relatively little outcry about that current setup, Not to say there's been none, but at the end of the day, you know, people are subscribing to it anyway from the sounds of things. So I don't know why they would change it. Other than to add more systems, yeah, I mean, maybe, you know, hey, maybe they'll put GameCube games on it and go from there. Yeah, I'm I don't know. I'm excited to see what they've got in store. Definitely. Like that's I have a level of anticipation for this that has only been increasing since the last chunk of info that they put out there. But again, a lot of it is not necessarily wrapped up in the things they're going to announce tomorrow. It's more of like a long-term, like, what does this mean for the video game industry? And is it something that will mark a change on that front or not? And that's not something we'll know tomorrow, right? That's something we'll know in a year's time, right? Is you know, what does this end up doing to the kind of landscape of this stuff? Because everything is so up in the air, man. I mean, look at Microsoft. Look at what they have completely rebuilt their entire console business to be not a console business. You know, like Sony is about to put out Last of Us 2 on PC. Sony is putting out Patapon on a Switch. Like the rules of this have been dead for a long time, but you still have a lot of business and a lot of things wrapped up in the old ways. And the best time to eliminate the old ways is when there's new hardware and new levels of excitement around said hardware. Combined with that Nintendo is still sort of seen as like neutral turf when it comes to the Nintendo or the Sony and Microsoft thing. Obviously, Microsoft is just a game publisher now that happens to make some boxes. And Sony is showing that they are willing to put games on the Switch. What the fuck happens from here? Right? But also, you know, then think about this 2 years down the line or whatever, when Sony launches its own handheld. Do they then never put a game on Switch ever again? Because they're like, no, now we need to sell our own PlayStation handheld again, this handheld PS5 or PS4, you know, whatever that thing ends up being. Do they pull back and say, oh, actually, I mean, yeah, this was like a fun couple of years we had, but no thanks. Now we're trying to sell this thing in Japan and try to have it take off the same way the Switch did. And we need Monster Hunter. We need a modern equivalent of Monster Hunter to sell this thing. So, you know, like that's stuff that could impact this kind of new openness in a maybe a negative way down the line as the landscape changes around who has what types of hardware in the market and whatever. You know, I think that there's a lot of interesting outcomes around that stuff that will all be governed by the numbers. Because I think a lot of the philosophical blocks that have been put in place over the decades, a lot of those have been eroded, right? For Sony to be putting games on a Nintendo platform in the first place, you know, a lot of those have to be eroded. And some of those are from market forces, right? Like Microsoft, I'm sure, would have loved to have just kept making Xboxes and selling Xbox games until the end of time. But the market said, we don't want that from you. We don't want your offering. We're not going to buy it in the quantities that are going to make that work for you. And so they've had to respond dramatically, very dramatically, you know? So what happens next, you know? That's the excitement I have around this, in conjunction, obviously, with like, hey, they're going to announce a new batch of games, and, you know, my daughter's going to be fucking extremely excited to learn about a new Mario Kart game. She went over to a friend's house over the weekend. Oh man. She went over to a friend's house and you know, they were over there playing, and he had Switch Sports set up. And so they played a bunch of tennis and, like, I guess basketball And then she came home and told me all about it. And then instead of me going, huh, me being me, I go like, oh yeah, we have that. And then I keep the OLED switch behind this TV so that the kids can't get it and fuck it all up. They run around with a Switch Lite that's like caked in some kind of gunk. I don't know, kid gunk. And so I pull the OLED switch out and take the controllers off and go, yeah, we have one of those. But we can't play it right now because it's bedtime. And so now I have a physical copy of Switch Sports around here somewhere. And now I have to find that so that they can play that here. I did not expect to be doing any more motion control Joy-Con type stuff, but here we are. But anyway, you know, she's loved Mario Kart in the past, and she has had me show her the 9 seconds or whatever the video is that they put out there a handful of times. So when they show more of it tomorrow, she's going to want to see that. And I'll be curious to see kind of how she reacts to some of the other whatever other stuff they show. But yeah, I really want to see what they end up doing with this thing, and I really want to see if this is something that catches on. I catches on with third parties is what I mean, you know, in a more lasting and more real way than I think Nintendo. It's not like Nintendo doesn't have third party support, but you know what I mean. It's not like it was. And by it's not like it was, I mean, it's not like it was when the Super Nintendo came out. I mean, after that is when Nintendo's third party started to get a little weird because the N64 was so differently capable than its competing platforms. And then, you know, well, I guess the GameCube, that was the first time it all felt like that like, hey, here's 3 machines that are basically the same. Because the GameCube got a ton of third party games that were also on Xbox and PS2. Switch got the games, like Switch got a lot of third party support, and there were like surprising games that did well. You'd hear about, you know, whether it was Overwatch or whatever, like, you know, there's a variety of third party games that were ported really well and did really well. And all of that. But you also would hear about like, oh, there's also some really grimy ports of big games on the Switch that don't run great. And so the Switch largely became like first party games and like smaller indie games that ran perfectly there and all of that sort of stuff. So, you know, it was less about the kind of traditional, you know, big game third party stuff. But I don't know. Well, I think we've talked around it in a zillion different ways, but yeah, I don't know. I really want to see what they show about the mouse stuff and how much time they spend on it and how many different games they show that uses it and how many different use cases they show for it. Like, what are they, you know, what is their ideal first introduction to that, and what does that look like, and what do they do? You know, and do they enlist some third parties to help make that work? Yeah, and yes, and bring back Street Pass. God damn it, man. Let's do Street Pass. Why can't we do Street Pass? You know, even if it's just a device, sell me a separate little dongle that plugs into the dock, and then I take it out and take it with me on my keychain. And then it, you know, it Bluetooths to the Switch 2 when it's local so that I always have it on me. And also let me use that as my Pokemon Go thing too. Because why not? Because whatever. I would not. I don't bring the Switch out of the house very often. So having to bring the whole thing with me just to Street Pass with folks would probably not work. I don't know. Street Pass would heal the world. Everyone knows it. There's other news that happened. Game Informer is back. That was happening kind of as we were wrapping up the show last week, but the website is already back online, and they are publishing new stories and all of this stuff. Like there's a Game Informer. They have, from the sounds of things, rehired pretty much the entire team that was there at the time of shutdown. They have access to the back catalog of content on the website and all this stuff, and that's pretty cool. They say there will be some kind of print component to it. And I wish them the best, because that's awesome. You don't really hear a lot of stories like this. They're being funded by a game company called Gunzilla Games, which has some kind of extraction shooter NFT game. To which I would say, it's a real bummer that they got that they are now owned by an NFT game. But previously they were owned by GameStop. So it's not like they were not owned by an NFT thing before. So I can't be too mad at it. I look at it and go like, I hope that works out. And they are, they've got in their kind of welcome back note here, they do say Game Informer now operates under an entity called Game Informer Inc. And our intent is to continue to focus on highlighting the coolest games, celebrating the history and legacy, so on and so forth. I'm deeply grateful for the trust and enthusiasm from the team at Gunzilla Games. They see the same potential in Game Informer as our team does, and their encouragement to do so ethically and free of outside pressure is laudable. So let's hope that stays that way. Situations like that tend to work until they don't, right? I mean, that's in my experience, that's all. Like everyone very much wants to do the right thing until there is suddenly pressure applied to the situation, and things can go south fast. But I don't want to, I don't want to sit here and pick it apart. Like I think it's awesome that they're doing this. The wisdom of launching a print magazine in 2025, like we'll see how that goes. I hope that they fucking nail it. I hope that's awesome. I hope that works out for them. That's cool. But I think if I were doing this, I would maybe not. Well, I don't know. Their intent is to bring the magazine bigger and better than it was before, and add a host of membership and subscription benefits, including an expanded scope to our videos, streaming, and feature coverage. So yeah, that all sounds like, relatively smart, straightforward stuff. And yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I don't know. I guess the question is, like, if you were going to do all that, do you do the magazine monthly, or do you do it as like a quarterly fun thing? That, your high tier subscribers get, or whatever. We'll see what kind of form it takes. And if they have like newsstand presence, or if they're actually doing proper distribution of it, or if it's something that is only for people who sign up on the website. Like I don't know. And they have not answered that, but those are the things I'm immediately curious about, I would say. Ubisoft has spun off a new subsidiary that is minority owned by Tencent. This subsidiary, which is apparently valued at a little over $4 billion, will have control over Assassin's Creed, Rainbow Six, and Far Cry. And so the team, this is from a memo that Guillermo sent out that Insider Gaming has. This subsidiary will gather the teams working on these brands primarily in the studios of Montreal, Quebec City, Sherbrooke, Saguenay, Barcelona, and Sofia. Tencent will be a 25% shareholder of this new subsidiary, with the aim of boosting these franchises so they become undisputed global icons. This sounds like a way to get Tencent to allow Tencent to invest more money into Ubisoft without the Guillermos having to give up control. This sounds like something they're specifically creating just to get some cash in the door and allow for this investment without them having to give up control of the company. And like a lot of things, this is the sort of thing that can go well until it doesn't. Sounds like Assassin's Creed Shadows is doing well, and they're saying it's the second best launch, I believe, for the franchise. It was like the number 2 selling game of the year so far, under Monster Hunter. So it sounds like that's doing well. I've been chipping away at that more and more. That is a quality game. This is a very nice looking game. So, good on them. But yeah, this seems like just a way for them to get more outside investment without having to give up control of the company, which is the thing that they have been they've very, very much not wanted to do. You remember Eve on stage thanking everyone for staving off the Vivendi attack on the company a number of years ago. This is still them trying to hang on to that level of control. You could maybe argue with the years that they've had since then that maybe those guys shouldn't be in control of the company anymore, but that's not how it works. So they still are. I think it's interesting, if you look at the carve up here, again, the franchises they're citing are Assassin's Creed, Rainbow Six, and Far Cry. So that means that they're now splitting some kind of ownership or stewardship or something of the Clancyverse across multiple organizations. Presumably that means that any other Tom Clancy thing that is not Rainbow Six, and and by Rainbow Six they really just mean Siege, because Siege is popular. And so I imagine that means that when it comes time for them to make a new Division game, it will not be this subsidiary that makes it. It will be whatever is left of the other studios of Ubisoft, of which there are a zillion. So it's a weird thing. It sounds like that they are still figuring out how that's going to work internally, because a lot of employees will suddenly become employees of the subsidiary instead of the core company. And, kind of who knows what that means. What it means is that they took the 3 things that were doing well for them, and Far Cry is maybe even on the bubble there a little bit, and set it off into a separate company that now maybe Tencent could own all of someday, which seems a little risky long term. But and I guess the other question is, again, like, what other games does core Ubisoft make? Do they just make Just Dance now? Like, are they going to become ultra focused on profitability and whatever? They're like, okay, or are they going to be coming up with new franchises, or will the subsidiary be where the brain trust lives that's coming up with new stuff? Like, will we ever see another Rayman game ever again, or Splinter Cell, or what have you? Like, I think the answer is they don't know yet. Reading over some of the stuff that they've been sending around internally, I don't think that they have great answers to those questions yet. But this is something that got them $4 billion and let them keep control of the company and all this other stuff. And I don't know. Is that short-sighted? Maybe, maybe not. Some screenshots leaked of the turn-based strategy game that Respawn has been working on with Bit Reactor, which is a studio primarily consisting of some folks who worked at Firaxis. And sure enough, when you see these screenshots that showed up on Twitter, it sure looks like they're making a Star Wars themed fucking XCOM game, man. Like, it's got Overwatch. And by that I mean the XCOM ability Overwatch. In represented in one of those screenshots. One of the screenshots is a Boba Fett looking motherfucker, like hiding behind cover, and there's a stormtrooper, and it says hit chance 95%, and you just know he's going to miss that fucking shot if he takes it. So, as someone who thought that Marvel game was not XCOM and was like, man, it would be cool to get some XCOM, this looks like some XCOM. According to, well, yeah, I think they've said it publicly, according to Video Game Chronicle as well, the game will be officially released, or officially announced at Star Wars Celebration, which is happening April 19th in Tokyo. Mind's Eye, the game from Leslie Benzies and company, will be out June 10th, which is not that far off. That is, again, like the first game set in their weird multiverse meta, whatever the fuck that thing is. Everywhere, or whatever they're calling it. In Fatal Fury Mark of the Wolves 2 news, in Fatal Fury City of the Wolves news, they're putting a soccer player in it. Cristiano Ronaldo, who is a real person, is going to be a character in this fighting game. I don't know. Apparently he's very popular or hated, depending on who you ask. I don't like, but they've got a page up on their site showing like his moves and how to do them. Like they have the moves list posted. Like, well, to do the field dominator, it's a quarter circle back with kick. The rising sea cross is a dragon punch. The deep rooted step is a quarter circle back with punch. And yeah, I don't know. He does soccer stuff. It looks like maybe he kicks energy balls at you. I don't know. Super weird guest character kind of thing. Yeah. As Pat says, it's a very Saudi move. Yeah. The investment, yes, the ownership of SNK these days. You look at it and go like, yeah, I could see why maybe this one. I can see why maybe this would happen. Is this the guy? Is this the same guy that in the bootleg and the Ronaldinho soccer? Or is that a different guy? Is Ronaldinho and Ronaldo, is that like, was one a nickname for the same guy, or is that a different guy? Different guy? Okay, different guy. Okay. Then I'm not interested. VideoGamesChronicle.com has some coverage. They talked to some folks at Night Dive recently about some of the remaster work and some of the remake work that they've been doing over the years. They've got an engine devoted to it, and they've been in the game for a while. They recently said as part of this that like they're hopeful about doing something with maybe No One Lives Forever at some point. But I think the interesting thing here, they also say they are, according to this article, ready and willing to start remastering Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 games. Games that are, maybe a little newer compared to some of the stuff they've been remastering, as well as some games that maybe didn't appear on PC at all. And so as part of this discussion, when asked about, bringing some of those games out again, the answer is, we stand ready. And they talk about their process a little bit, like, oh, what would they have? Would they have source code? Would they have this? And, those would all impact the ability. But Stephen Kick, who is the head of the studio, when asked about this, the first game seemingly out of his mouth was Haze. He says, to your point, though, with a game like Haze, let's say hypothetically we had access to that and that was our big title for 2028, right? We would go to the original designers and we would say, it didn't do as well as you had hoped. I'm sure you had a lot of time to ruminate and think about what you would have done differently. And, say that they've had some of those discussions before. The article does not specify if that was just out of nowhere or if they were presented with Haze. The answer saying, to your point with a game like Haze, makes me wonder if they fed him the name Haze, but also what if they... No, the caption, Kick gave Haze as an example of a PS3 exclusive that should be remastered. Yeah, man, you should remaster Haze. I mean, whatever. Haze is not, when we look at the list of games that Night Dive has taken on over the years, Haze would not be the worst one that they have done. And so, as I'm not going to say that I'm a Haze fan, but as someone whose career has somehow circled the Haze IP a number of times over the years in a disturbing way, as someone who has spent a lot of time on podcasts talking about things only indirectly related to the video game Haze, I will say I feel like I need to weigh in on this. And what I say is, yes, you should remaster Haze. Night Dive should absolutely remaster Haze, but only if you can get the soundtrack. Otherwise, don't bother. Like, it's a waste of time. If you cannot get... I want a new interview with Jonathan Davis, in fact, to go along with this. I think we need a new, go talk to the developers of the original game and see what they have to say about it. But if you're not talking to the corn man, I want you to talk to Fieldy about a wide range of things, but really also Haze, and see what Fieldy has to say about Haze. He's baby Hugh Hef. That Fieldy. Talk to them about their coffee line. That's going to do it for the news. Let's get a couple of emails in here before we go. Podcast@guard.bike is the email address for you. To send in emails to me. I will filter. It's a different process. I changed email hosts. Now it's a different process here. John writes in and says, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely do you think it is that Kojima is pulling a Metal Gear Solid 2 style bait and switch, and you actually spend most of Death Stranding 2 playing as the Solid Snake stand-in or some other guy? I think he's so self-referential that he might not be able to resist. If so, and assuming the gameplay were significantly different, would that be better or worse? I don't think he'll do it again. I don't think there's a real need to do it. I don't think it would work or be received as well as it was then. And also, we're talking about a character that is completely built upon and based on and looks like Norman Reedus, who, he'll want to take advantage of that. So I don't think that there's a good reason to. I mean, forget the other guy, the Neil guy, just like anyone, if you like playing as any other character in that game. I don't think that is the direction that they're heading in. You could always be wrong, right? But I don't think that's the way they're going with it. Let's see. Steven writes in, was it ever okay that Nintendo released 2 versions of the same game with slight differences? Was this accepted by the press and public from day one? Did it feel earned or novel, or did it feel like a ripoff back then? He's talking specifically about Pokemon like Red and Blue. Now imagine another franchise trying this today, even a well-established, beloved one. Would the public accept a Monster Hunter Wilds Red and Monster Hunter Wilds Blue? Would they accept a GTA 6 Red and a GTA 6 Blue? So, I think Monster Hunter would make sense. I think GTA would not, because if you remember, the things that make those versions different was that there were different creatures. They were collection games. You were trying to catch them all. You were trying, and so having different and trading those things was a big part of the game. And so trading the things you could collect and trading it with other players is a crucial part of this, because that's the thing that prevents you from having to buy both versions of the game. It was something they did in order to help inspire people to trade and help inspire people to get a link cable and do all of that stuff. It wasn't so that they could sell 2 copies of the game. Obviously, they did. I'm sure that there were some lunatics out there that certainly bought both. But they're the same game, but with like 4 different monsters. It's not even like a dramatic number. And so they still kind of do this, and you still have to make your choice. But it's the same basic concept of like relatively minor differences. And this is from an era when you didn't really do microtransactions and you didn't really do, like a deluxe edition, whatever. So, it was coming from a different time overall. Monster Hunter, you could see a world where like, each version has one exclusive monster and thus has specific armor. You could see a situation where like, hey, in order to get the ultimate armor in the game, you need to connect to someone else's world and go fight that monster with them, or trade like materials with them in order to get all the materials from both ultimate monsters to create this, like there's things they could do in that I don't think would be like scummy. Because they would just inspire multiplayer. Now, of course, these days people will just game the shit out of it and go like, okay, we're setting up a factory here, and okay, it's your turn to connect to the server, and I'm going to hand you this stuff, and you're going to hand me this stuff, and then we're going to go and whatever. Like I think that stuff would not be used in its intended way these days with online games. But in a world where you had to trade with people locally because that was the only option, it was cool. It was interesting. I think that those were good examples of how to do it. And I think the Mega Man games did it well, and everyone kind of did it from there. What else was there? Like Digimon did it. Didn't like Dokapon do it? Also, wasn't there like a handful of, and then Zelda did it with their Oracle I don't like, that was weird. That one was kind of strange, I thought. But yes, that's right. Bomberman did it for a game or two also, didn't they? The Oracle thing is a little different. But yeah, I thought that this was neat. I don't know. Like at the time it was like, this is an interesting thing, and that'll be a way for you to, you'll want to trade with people who have the other version of the game, and if you're dealing with your friends, one of you will buy red and the other will buy blue. Like there's nothing. I don't know. There was nothing wrong with it, because they weren't saying, hey, you need to buy both of them. Now, when they eventually came out with yellow and it kind of combined, when they eventually do kind of combine the two things, as this like weird director's cut almost thing. Maybe that's a little out there, but as it stands, no real issues with it. And no one had issues with it then either, because I think it was pretty well explained in terms of why they were doing it and how it worked and everything else, Mason in Virginia. With all the talk of Half-Life 3, I've got to ask, will we get the rest of the Sin episodes? I know that the characters show up in Phantom Fury, but we need the conclusion of John Blade's epic tale. You know what? I don't think that there's going to be a follow-up to Sin episodes. I don't think we're going to see. I don't think that's going to come back. I don't think. Maybe Night Dive will put Sin. Maybe they'll do something with Sin. But I just don't think that's going to happen. All these years later, I think if it was going to happen, it would happen by now. Let's see here. We're kind of short on time. So I'm trying to pick ones that'll be relatively short. James from Texas writes in and says, bring back peer-to-peer. Why doesn't someone bring back peer-to-peer matchmaking? I get that it would only be useful to PC multiplayer right now, but all these small studio games come out and burn to the ground instantly because they can't afford the server fees. Just do peer-to-peer, and at least when your game bombs and you have to shutter your studio, the game I bought is still technically playable. We live in a time when we have the fastest internet we've ever had, And somehow online gaming is only slightly better than it was in 1999 when I was playing Quake 3 over friggin' dial-up. I miss loading up Unreal Tournament and running through random levels built by psychos with too much free time. At the very least, it would be awesome for shooters. So a lot of games still do peer-to-peer matchmaking. They just use, whether it's Steam or Xbox Live or whatever, as like the matchmaking service, right? And then everyone connects via peer-to-peer and goes from there. And so you would still have some games with like host advantages and whatever else. You run into issues where like some games are going to be too large to realistically handle peer-to-peer networking. And also, if you're letting people download dedicated servers in this day and age, like everyone is so fucking caught up in cheating and keeping that stuff safe, especially on consoles, that you can't just easily distribute dedicated server software to users because they could modify it and do weird shit. Then consoles get hacked and games get pirated and there's chaos, right? Yes, the larger question is like, why are we paying money for games that we're hosting peer-to-peer? Why are we paying for a matchmaking service? Why are we paying for something that's not even as good as a server browser it used to be back then? But yes, plenty of games are still peer-to-peer. Like fighting games are not connecting to some central server for gameplay purposes. They're connecting to a matchmaking server for matchmaking. And especially in cross-platform environments, which, are more and more common, companies need to be running their own stuff, or at least, using Epic online services or whatever, some kind of middleware that is going to facilitate these cross-platform matchmaking scenarios. So it's really a lot of games that, sometimes they're free to play, sometimes that, for a variety of reasons why these servers just go offline completely. And it's because plenty of people's connections still cannot handle like running a full battle royale locally. And also if they were running it locally, they would have a ping advantage and there's all sorts of shit like that. It's messy. And if enough people cared about the game would have been successful. And, there's a lot of little reasons like that ultimately. And that's going to do it. Thanks everybody for writing in. podcast@guard.bike is the email address. Tomorrow's the day. 6 a.m. Pacific time. I will be here bright and early to learn about the Nintendo Switch 2 with all of you. So come on through and we'll check it out. And I'm going to get going. Have a good one. I will see you in the morning. Very, very early. Oh boy.